It's 1-1, OK. Oh, I can hear myself coming down the line.
Migrants are fighting for their lives in hospital. 4 have died after a boat capsized in the English Channel.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Thursday, December the 15th. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel, Webster and Andrew Pearce. Here's what's making the headlines this morning.
The Prime Minister expressed his sorrow at the capsizing of a small boat in the Channel, telling MPs there'd been a tragic loss of human life. 4 people have died. Many others remain in hospital after being rescued from the freezing water.
Nurses in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will stage walkouts this morning in the largest strike action in NHS history. Staff will continue to provide life-preserving and urgent care, but routine surgery and other planned treatments will be disrupted.
Another royal bombshell. The second part of Harry and Meghan's explosive Netflix series drops at 8 o'clock this morning. We'll be counting down the minutes to the second instalment and going live to our royal reaction room.
And it's France versus Argentina. Is that in the football?
Yeah.
The 2 former champions will battle it out in the World Cup final in Qatar this weekend. I'm not watching.
Yeah, that's right. Heartbreak for Morocco, but it's Mbappe against Messi in the World Cup final coming up on Sunday. We'll have all the details live from Doha.
And we would love to hear from you this morning. Get in touch the usual way via Twitter or email. It's gbviews@gbnews.uk. And we are asking you, please let us know where you're watching or listening from, and we'll give your town or city a shout out.
To our main story, 4 people have died after a migrant boat capsized in the English Channel yesterday. It's the worst tragedy in the Strait for over a year.
The dinghy carrying the migrants is believed to have suffered a puncture halfway across the Channel, around 12 miles from Dungeness.
39 people were pulled from the freezing water, but 4 more are missing, according to survivors.
Well, this tragedy comes as more than 44,000 people have made the dangerous crossing this year so far. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, has more.
Just 13 months after 27 migrants drowned in the English Channel, another tragedy unfolding offshore. The sound of helicopters filling the night sky as Coast Guard and air ambulance assets scrambled to the scene. There were dozens of people in the water after their small migrant boat got into difficulties. Lifeboats, Border Force and Royal Navy vessels, along with their French counterparts, converged on an area about 8 miles off the Kent coast. Back in Dover, ambulances were on standby in the harbour to receive the casualties. As the morning progressed, the worst possible news, with the confirmation of multiple fatalities. Their bodies brought back to shore as the Home Secretary addressed Parliament on another Channel tragedy authorities had long warned about.
These are the days that we dread. Crossing the Channel in unseaworthy vessels is a lethally dangerous endeavour. It is for this reason, above all, that we are working so hard to destroy the business model of the people smugglers, evil, organised criminals who treat human beings as cargo.
Even as the massive air and sea search operation continued, UK and French authorities had to respond to several other small boat sightings, picking up and transferring hundreds of migrants to Dover as the criminal gangs took full advantage of calmer weather conditions in the Channel.
The brutal truth as well is that criminal gangs have made money from those lives that were lost today. They have profited as people have drowned. Day after day, week after week, criminal gangs are putting lives at risk for money.
This latest tragedy came less than a day after the Prime Minister announced a new multi-pronged plan he hoped would help reduce the number of small boat crossings. Although the authorities in France and the UK have long warned about the dangers of trying to negotiate the English Channel in a flimsy small inflatable, there is no end to the number of people who seem to be willing to take that risk. And as far as the criminal gangs are concerned, well, they're not going to stop what is a lucrative multi-million-pound criminal enterprise. Even in these winter months, the Channel migrants will keep coming. Whenever the criminal gangs see a weather window, they'll launch en masse from French beaches. And sadly, individual tragedies will do nothing to deter them. Mark White, GB News, Dover.
And we will be live from Dover and speaking to Mark White throughout the course of the morning a little bit later on.
Now, tens of thousands of nurses are expected to strike across England, Wales and Northern Ireland today, sparking the largest disruption in the history of the NHS.
Well, yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer told Rishi Sunak that today's action is a badge of shame on the government and accused the Prime Minister of being in hibernation.
With us this morning to unpack all this is the former aide to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury and the current Health Secretary, of course, Steve Barclay, Leon Emirali. Morning.
Morning.
Well, first of all, I suppose it's appetite, given who you are, to talk about Steve Barclay and all of this. A lot of people highly critical that although he met with the union this week, he didn't sit down. Obviously, Sir Keir Starmer calling it a badge of shame. I mean, will the government feel like it is?
Well, I don't think they necessarily will. I do think that the public sympathy that was initially with the nurses is waning as time goes on. I think that the negotiating stance of the unions is far beyond what's affordable. 19%, no one says that that's feasible.
I get that, Leon, but look, I'm just looking at this poll here in the front page of the Express, a very loyal Tory newspaper. Look at this headline. Give nurses a deal and stop this madness. 52% support the nurses. OK, that's only just over half, but only 27% opposed to the strike. So that, I don't think necessarily the government's taken the public with them on this.
Well, that's the case now. I think let's see what happens once these strikes get underway, because if people end up potentially losing their lives, potentially not receiving the care they have, does the public get behind the government or do they get behind the nurses? Who do they blame for potentially disruption during those strikes?
I was going to say, is it as cynical as that? Are we entering into a game, almost a game here, where the government think if we hold our nerve, public opinion will switch our way? Because we're talking about people's lives at risk here because of this nurses' strike.
Yeah, indeed. And I think that is the big trouble here. This isn't just a case of you might miss your train and not make the Christmas party. This is life and death. And that is why the stakes are so high. And I think there is an element of the government holding its nerve, waiting to see what happens, and ultimately looking for the nursing unions to back down or to come back to the table with a more realistic figure. I think if they do that, then there can be a win-win for all sides.
But surely the government knows that there's wiggle room there. They only have to look to Scotland to see what was negotiated with the Scottish government. It was something like 7%. So clearly nurses are going to be prepared to take a lower deal. But the problem is that Steve Barclay won't even discuss finances, talk about pay.
Well, I think Steve is a very formidable negotiator. We saw that during his period as Brexit Secretary. And I think that that's part of what he's doing here, just in the way the nursing unions are playing their negotiating tactics too. So I do think there is a middle ground for both parties to get around the table, have that discussion, but ultimately they have to play hard and try and get their best.
And I suppose in defence of the government, we had inflation figures out yesterday. We're expecting interest rates a little bit later on. I mean, the picture is changing. And as you say, that 19% figure looks more and more as though the unions have overplayed their hands, doesn't it? Not least with the Chancellor yesterday saying he really wants to try and see inflation halved by the end of next year.
Yeah, and we're seeing the inflation come down slowly. But if we were to bake in a 19% pay rise for a huge swathe of the public sector, then inflation's not likely to go down anymore. So this is an important part on the macro side of economics as well.
Help me out with the independent pay review body, which recommended the nurses get £1,400 pay rise. Now, when I argue this with Labour MPs, they say, "Oh yeah, but it's all rigged because there's only so much money on the table that the independent pay review body can negotiate with." Is that right or not?
Well, it is to an extent. There is a limit as to how far that can go, and ultimately that is within the realms of what's affordable and what is seen as
So it's not
fair.
as independent as it sounds then, because the government said how much there is in the kitty.
Well, they are hiding behind that. You know, the government are certainly hiding behind it to an extent and saying, look, the independent pay review said this. That isn't quite the full story. There isn't an unlimited pot. There is a number they can choose from up to a point. And I think that is what they're hiding behind and trying to stave this off.
Leon, can I talk about the other big story of the day? And we touched on it at the top of the programme, the tragedy that unfolded in the Channel yesterday, just over a year since another horrifying incident in the Channel. Obviously, a huge announcement being made by the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary as well, keen to try and sort this out. The Prime Minister effectively staking his premiership on this, isn't he, by saying that he wants that backlog cleared by the end of next year. Are they doing enough? Can he do it?
Well, I think it's, first of all, incredibly sad. You know, these are people's lives that have been lost. And I think that the politicians have got a job on their hands. We've had successive Home Secretaries, successive Prime Ministers saying they are going to get to grips with the migrant crisis. We know that it's at the top priority of a lot of voters' minds when it comes to who they vote for in an election. But this is not something that's easily fixed. It's not easy from a legislative point of view. It's not easy from a political point of view. So they can talk tough, but I think the proof will be in the action that we see from politicians.
Just before we let you go, are we going to have to come out of the European Court of Human Rights?
I think it makes life easier if that was to happen, Andrew, but there's more at stake wrapped up in that. That touches a very variety of different things.
The only other country, I think, in Europe that isn't part of it is Russia. Indeed.
And I think, do we want to be in that group or do we want to be part of the more palatable group? And I think that's a question.
Owen Paterson has proved that the staunch Brexiteer who was opposed to the ECHR has now depending on it to try and take his case against the government. But anyway, we digress. Just a final question to you on Dominic Raab. He's in a bit of trouble, isn't he?
He is. You know, this story's rumbling on. We're hearing, you know, complaint after complaint against Dominic Raab's conduct. And I think as that starts building, we're seeing a picture of Dominic Raab that becomes increasingly hard to defend.
He was the Justice Secretary. He is the Justice Secretary. Did you hear stories that he was, when you were in government, that he was a bully?
You certainly hear of someone who's a committed minister, and you know I think that means there is.
That's very diplomatic.
Well, look,
a committed minister.
I think that there is a fine line between being what people classify as a bully and people classify as a hard taskmaster.
I've never heard anyone blur the lines between committed and bully. Sorry to put you on the spot. I know it's a horrible question.
No, I mean, look, ultimately,
did he ever bully you?
He didn't ever bully me, Andrew. I can say that much. But I think it's a hard job, and I think you know people have to realise that. There is pressurised situations, and that happens in every workplace. But I think we have to get to the bottom of exactly what's happened. And then if it's beyond the pale, then I think obviously action has to be taken.
Fascinating.
Leon Emirali, thank you very much. Always good to get your take. I think we've got more from you in the 7 as well.
We do.
Looking forward to it. Time is now 12 minutes past 6. We're going to bring you up to date with the rest of today's main stories.
So the final episodes of Harry and Meghan's Netflix docu-series will air later this morning. The couple is claiming that the palace briefed against them to deflect attention from the less favourable coverage of other royals. The palace has so far not commented on the series.
And the government says significant progress is being made in how the criminal justice system responds to rape cases. According to a review from last summer, the pledge to more than double the number of rape cases reaching court by this Christmas is within reach. It comes amid a backlog of cases as a result, they say, of the barrister strike.
Thousands of people in Shetland are facing a fourth day without power as snow and freezing temperatures continue to grip the UK. Almost 3,000 homes have been left without electricity when heavy snow fell on cables earlier this week. More than 120 extra engineers were drafted in to help reconnect. Now, I don't know about you, in our household, the countdown to Christmas is a daily thing with Alexa. How many days, Alexa, until Christmas? It's 10 days, in case you didn't know.
Right.
Alexa is such a big thing now, and I just think this is a really entertaining little piece. The Liverpool score and Elon Musk's net worth are among the top queries of 2022 on Alexa. Apparently, the age of Diana Ross also up there. Questions about who the former Prime Minister Liz Truss is married to, bizarrely. Of all things, Ed Sheeran was the most requested music artist, Peppa Pig was watched the most, and getting pancake recipes was the most popular food recipe.
I feel... does this make me feel old? Because I don't have Alexa, and I'm not going to have Alexa, and so many times when I call friends, they say, Alexa, Stop, Alexa.
Yeah.
Be quiet,
Oh,
Alexa. And
I
I think
know.
it's like having a
Naughty child.
Yes.
An extra naughty child.
And as one who's not a parent, I don't want to take on a naughty child
Yeah.
in the form of Alexa. So
I wish
my
I
life is
didn't
better
have
without
Alexa
it.
in my life. Yeah, but I do ask Alexa the forecast every day. That's my...
The weather forecast?
Yes, the weather forecast.
Right, and is it right?
Yeah, mostly.
And is Alexa a man or a woman?
A woman.
Right.
Yeah.
Are we comfortable with that?
Yeah, fine with that.
OK, well, I'm just not sure, these
But
days.
I wish I was Alexa-free. And actually, I nearly called one of my children Alexa, and I'm so grateful I didn't. Can you imagine? Everyone shouting at her.
Wasn't Joan Collins' great character? Oh, no, she was Alexis. wasn't she?
Alexis,
Alexis
there you go.
Carrington
Yeah,
in
similar.
Dynasty. Yeah. I'd rather talk to her than Alexa.
Oh, gosh, me too. So let us know your Alexa stories. What's the most Alexa-asked question in your household? Do you love her or loathe her? I kind of, accept we need her, but...
No, you don't need her. You can go manage quite well. Do you have to pay for her?
I think so. Don't know.
Oh.
Probably. I mean, you have to buy the Alexa, but I don't know if there's a subscription. I should know this. My husband sorts that out.
Right.
Modern feminist and all.
Conventional household here.
Anyway,
Yes.
at midday today, the ONS Consumer Price Index will release the UK's monthly inflation figures. Yesterday, we revealed interest rates fell slightly to 10.7% in November.
But the cost of living is still close to a 40-year high, squeezing millions of households and businesses. Higher interest rates will force people, of course, to pay more to service their debts, car loans, credit cards and, of course, their mortgages.
Well, our national reporter, Theo Chicumba, has been looking into what it could mean for millions across the UK.
With the festive season underway, Louise from Northampton has been juggling 3 jobs to provide for her family this year. But another rise in interest rates could see her budget squeezed even more.
Initially, it was so that we could have extras and go on holiday, that type of thing. But now I'm finding that it's literally paying for day-to-day living and then the other side of it, which is obviously a bit negative, is the fact that I've lived off credit cards and going into the new year knowing that I'm going to have to pay that back with, high interests. When petrol went up, that was a big sort of thing, and I know it's come down slightly, but it does impact everything. It impacts food, it impacts the cost of everything, and I don't think we've seen that change.
This year, we've seen the rate set by the Bank of England at its highest level in 14 years, a move implemented to tackle rising prices, which have been going up post-pandemic, making it more expensive for those who need to borrow.
For people on a tracker rate, they're the ones who are going to be affected straight away, and they will see their mortgage rates go up by the amount of the Bank of England base rate increase today. So that will change their payments immediately. But the good news is that lenders are still very robust. They still want to lend. So although there's not much activity now until the end of this year, I suspect that lenders are going to come back into the market in full force second or third week of January.
Affordability remains a constraint for first-time buyers or those looking to move. But is there still an appetite despite the economic landscape?
I think a lot of people will wait definitely till next year now and then reevaluate their situation, and so they know, because a lot of people want fixed rates. So at the moment they're really cautious about where they go. And I think people just want to wait to see until the market settles down next year and then evaluate their situation. I think they're also worried about house prices coming down as well, because that's forecast anywhere between 7 to 10%. And I think people are just being very cautious. That's my opinion at the moment.
While inflation falling this week has been welcomed, a rise in interest rates may add pressure to what's already an excruciating financial tourniquet for millions across the UK. Theo Chicumba, GB News.
Right, after the break, we are off to Qatar in France, preparing to take on Argentina in the World Cup. But first, here's your forecast.
Good morning and welcome to your latest weather update with me, Annie Shuttleworth, from the Met Office. It's going to be another cold day out there today, though many areas will see some sunshine. Now, the reason it's so cold, we've still got this very cold, deep blue Arctic air pushing down from the Arctic, covering much of the UK. Notice there's also this occlusion that will bring more showers to eastern areas. So there could be some ice on untreated roads across northeastern areas of England, as well as Northern Ireland and parts of northern and eastern Scotland, where there are warnings in force through Thursday morning. Away from that, relatively dry, some sunshine, warming up a little bit in the sunshine, but there will be a bit more of a breeze than recent days. So because of that, feeling quite chilly exposed to the breeze, closer to 0 for many areas, even by the daytime. The snow showers will continue for much of Thursday across northern Scotland, but into the evening they will start to fade away and many areas will see quite a dry night on Thursday night. Clear spells allowing temperatures to plummet. It's likely to be the coldest night we've seen over the past week or so. Some freezing fog and murky weather will develop in the southeast, so many areas a severe frost as low as -15 on any snow surfaces overnight on Thursday night and Friday morning. Now, we'll see the next band of rain push into western Scotland. There's a snow and ice warning out for that for Friday morning. It'll fall as snow to lower levels at first, but become increasingly rain and sleet by Friday afternoon as things start to warm up ahead of the weekend. Though, having said that, across much of the UK, it will be a crisp and cold day through Friday. So it will warm up as we see wetter and windier weather approach from the west for the weekend, with temperatures coming up to the mid-teens for some of us by Sunday.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Still to come on the programme this morning as thousands of nurses are walking out in the first round of strikes. At 6:45, we'll be speaking to a nurse turned health minister, Maria Caulfield. She still does some nursing shifts.
She does. It's there in the MP's Register of Interests. And as the clock ticks down to the second instalment, can you hardly wait, of Harry and Meghan Netflix rant series. Whinge Fest. We're live from the GB News Royal Reaction Room as we wait for those first clips to drop.
And as always, we'd love to hear from you this morning in all the usual ways. We've been giggling, actually, some funny tweets and messages. Dean says, can you stop saying Alexa? Mine's going mad now. Sorry, I've just done it again. And Anne says, Alexa, please shout at my husband. He's asleep again. That made us giggle. Sorry, we're going to keep messing with your Alexas all morning. It's a bit of fun.
They are. So you can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews. Apparently, France beat Morocco in the second semi-final last night as Les Bleus held on against the tournament wild cards.
Well, it sets up a thrilling final now, while France could be the first team to retain the title since Brazil in 1962 as they take on Argentina.
Or could Messi, who is apparently the world's greatest player, could he cement himself as the greatest player of all time? by winning. Let's cross over to Qatar, where our reporter Paul Hawkins is waiting for us, breathless with excitement.
Yeah, good morning to you, Paul. Look, I suppose in many ways the match last night was something of a French derby, if you like. Huge interest from France anyway, but it resulted in some riots in Paris and, tragically, actually the death of a little boy.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, there was that did overshadow the action on the pitch. We'll get to that in just a moment. But just to take you through what happened last night in terms of what happened on the pitch, it is all over for Morocco. The dream is over. They were the underdogs. Morocco were 2 games away from winning the World Cup, which is just ridiculous when you think about it. But they deserved to be there. The first African country to reach the semi-final, first Arab country to reach the semi-final. They'd lost 2-0 to France, and to be honest, they were under the cosh to start with a couple of injuries to defenders, and the French were never fantastic. Like against England, they weren't fantastic, but they just did enough to get through, and they had to hang on. The Moroccans hitting the post with an overhead kick. So disappointment for Moroccan fans, disappointment for French fans, but this is how they were feeling after the game.
Of course, we are proud and we are sad at the same time. We are proud because it's the first time an Arab country play in the semi-final, but we are sad because we want to go to the final. But yeah, this is the game, and I hope they will win the next match, inshallah.
Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, same like that. But I'm happy because the first time going to this place, and before we can't go to this one. Now we have good team, we have good coach and good player. I hope good luck for everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, of course, we are proud and we are sad at the same time. We are proud because it's the first time an Arab country play in the semi-final, but we are sad because we want to go to the final. But yeah, this is the game, and I hope they will win the next match, inshallah.
Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, same like that. But I'm happy because the first time going to this place, and before we can't go to this one. Now we have good team, we have good coach and good player. I hope good luck for everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, of course, we are proud and we are sad at the same time. We are proud because it's the first time an Arab country play in the semi-final, but we are sad because we...
Yes, a disappointment for Morocco, but the French march on to another final. And for France, as you said, they can become the first country to retain the World Cup since 1962. But the big story, really, the underlying story is Lionel Messi going to win the World Cup, because he's touted as one of the best players in the world. But is he going to be up there with Maradona and Pelé? He hasn't won a World Cup. That's where the critics say, well, Maradona and Pelé are one of the greats. Until Messi does it, he's not. So that's the underlying story for the Argentinians. And for the French, they can become the first country to retain the World Cup since 1962. And actually, look at this enterprising merchandise stall over here. This guy's wasted no time whatsoever. He's already got the Argentina and the French kits up there already. So I think they'll be doing a roaring trade in those as we head towards the final on Sunday.
Paul, thank you very much indeed.
Well, why don't you stay with us, because we're going through the papers with Freddie Gray from The Spectator and the journalist and playwright Emma Burnell.
See you in a moment.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Well, welcome back. You're watching GB News Breakfast with Isabel, Webster and me, Andrew Pearce. Let's bring you up to date with today's front pages.
Let's start with The Sun, shall we? It goes with £5,000 ticket to death as 4 migrants die in the freezing channel.
And the Times also focuses on those 4 people who died in the channel after the migrant dinghy sank. They also commemorate King Charles and his first 100 days as monarch.
The Telegraph says the damage of nurses' strikes will get worse as they look ahead to even more walkouts in January.
And in The Guardian, a scathing report condemns police for victim blaming in rape crises with persistent failings in the criminal justice system.
And the Metro is focusing on Zara Alina's killer, who was given 38 years in jail yesterday for her murder. They say she was just on her way home.
And in The Star, tough luck, kid. Your presents have been eaten by foxes as animals feast on undelivered Christmas gifts at post office depots because of the strike.
Well, this is our favourite part of the programme, isn't
Love
it?
this
We get
bit.
to go through the newspapers for you. We've got the deputy editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray, and the journalist and playwright Emma Burnell to join us for this joyous part of the show. Freddie, I say joyous, actually a horrible human story on the front of most of the papers. This is the front of the Times that you wanted to start with. The headline, 4 dead after migrant dinghy sinks in the Channel.
Well, yes, it is a terrible story, deeply sad. The Times has the quotes from the fishermen who rescued them. One which stood out to me was, it was like something out of a Second World War movie. There were people in the water everywhere screaming. And of course, this was going to be Rishi Sunak's big migrant crackdown week. But of course, these stories always seem to pop up around these times, and they kind of, you know, they get away from the political conversation, as they should, because they are human tragedies. But they also do make the political point, because this situation is ridiculous. And we had rather a good piece yesterday, actually it's going to be published today, about the French, because, I mean, I'm half French, I'm not anti-French at all, but I do think France has to take more responsibility for this, and I don't think this deal is clear enough that the French are responsible for these boats, more than we are, and I think they need to do a better job of stopping them.
But if these migrants don't want to be in France, what are the French supposed to do? Because presumably they don't really want them either.
Well, they could patrol the borders better.
Yeah,
I mean,
Freddie, those beaches, it's hundreds of miles of beaches.
Hundreds of miles of beaches, but they do a pretty good job at protecting Italy, where there's hundreds of miles of mountains. I mean, my mother is from Menton, which is right down by the Italian border, by Ventimiglia, and they have military units there patrolling all the time. They just push them back into Italy.
Do you think it's because, as Isabel suggests, the French just don't want them, so they're almost turning a blind eye, or almost giving tacit encouragement to go, which is wicked if it's true?
I think some European states, and I think this is true of the French, are better at not applying EU law. They're not applying the rules as we have, even after leaving the EU. So, yes, I think they turn a blind eye to their obligations.
But does this terrible tragedy make it more particularly difficult for Rishi Sunak or does this actually fire up his plan to really try and crack down on this once and for all?
I think it does a bit of both, actually, weirdly. I think it shows how bad the problem is, but it does also leave him open to accusations of being reckless, And I do think people do need to be responsible. We talk about migrants as though they're this sort of terrible, selfish invasion, and then you realise how desperate they must be. But what's so perverse and odd about it is that you have enough money to have £5,000 to do this crossing, but you're still desperate enough to want to risk crossing in the freezing cold.
I don't know if you heard the SOS call that was made, and you could hear children and people praying and screaming. As you say, just the most horrible human tragedy in all of this. Is the answer more or even any legal routes for asylum seekers? Because my mind goes back to when Suella Braverman was in front of the Select Committee recently, and her own party MP, I think it was Tim Lawton, basically said to him, what do you do if you're in an East African country and your country's war-torn and you're trying to flee persecution and you've got family in the UK and you're trying to make that link? And she wasn't able to give an answer and explanation. These are very difficult questions, but the Home Secretary can't come up with an answer.
Well, exactly. I am glad, not glad that this has happened, but that the response to this has been immediately to remember the humanity of those who are trying to cross and those who have died, because that is essential. These are human beings. Whatever laws that we should be enacting and keeping, we've got to remember our humanity and theirs at the heart of all of this. I think the answer is that we do need to have a system that works and safe and legal routes that are then able to enforce the laws that we have. So we need to be able to offer safe and legal routes, because let's face it, there is no circumstance with any policy area in which making something illegal hasn't just immediately created an illegal market. That's what's happened. We have basically structured the business model of the people that are willing to let these people die in the Channel.
But what is a safe and legal route?
A safe and legal route is a way of applying within country to say, I believe that I have a case, for us to have a proper system that is structured to then make that decision so that people don't have to be putting themselves into this situation. So that if they have a case, and many of these people do have a case, we are seeing large majorities of these people actually having their asylum claims accepted.
But that's just because it's chaos. There
is chaos. There are a lot of them are waiting far, far too long for that decision.
Yeah,
but also, when that decision is taken, there are a large percentage of them that are accepted. If they were able to have that decision made in country, we wouldn't see those people with a valid claim putting themselves through this. But at the moment, we have no way of them having that ability.
Would it not be possible to try and process some of these applications in France? I've never understood why I know that there's been questions over sovereignty, but I've never really understood why we can't allow applications to be made in France. And if, as Rishi Sunak wants, with the declaration of Albania, for example, as a safe country, then instantly you eliminate that tranche of people coming across the Channel.
We have given France quite a lot of money to do that, but it doesn't seem to happen. I think what Rishi Sunak has hinted at is that he thinks asylum is an outdated policy, sort of globally.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a good realisation, because it's actually crueler to have this current system, which means that desperate people are being sort of shoved around the world all over the place. It is an insolvable problem. It's the future. It's what the rest of the world's going to look like for a long time. But, something's got to be done, and currently asylum is not the way to do it.
OK, look, we're going to take a pause in the papers, Freddie and Emma, because actually we have a minister standing by to speak to us. We're going to speak to Health Minister Maria Caulfield as nurses... Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were taking a minister. Right, are we taking a break? Somebody tell me. Right, well, we'll carry on with the papers.
No, we're going to carry on with the papers.
As we were.
We are going to get that government minister. But we are going to talk about the nurses' strike.
We are.
Emma, it's on a lot of the front pages.
Yeah.
First time ever.
First time in the 106-year history, I believe, of the RCN, which is not a militant union, never has been. I've actually done some previous work with the RCN. They are... they're made up of ordinary nurses, the kind of people that we meet all the time. And they do feel very much that they've been pushed into this. We are not talking about a recent crisis. We are talking about 10 years of degraded pay and degraded conditions. And there is a reason we've got 47,000 vacancies in nursing, because it's just not an attractive proposition for people to go into. And yes, nursing is a wonderful vocation, and you want to be able to do it. And lots of kids grow up thinking, I'd love to be able to do that job. But then when you get to the point that you can't feed your family, you can't, have a decent lifestyle, more and more people are finding they just can't stay in nursing. It's a huge problem with retention, and also problem with recruitment, because at the moment, why would you go into a job where you know that you're not going to earn enough?
But the government would argue, and no doubt that's what Maria Crawford is going to tell us when we speak to her, that the pay rise of £1,400, not bad, was set by an independent pay review body.
Well, independent pay review body is largely a misnomer. They're not that independent. Their terms are set by the government, and their terms are not simply to look at what nursing should be paid. They have a much wider remit that is all about the government's economic strategy, how much the money the government has already decided to put into the NHS or not, and how much money that then comes to is considerably affected by inflation. So this independent pay review body has had a number of political decisions made before it ever gets its hands on any decision-making.
Yeah, but the trouble in all of this, as you say, nursing is a vocation, and a lot of people, including nurses, have been in touch with us in recent days, Freddie, saying, actually, this goes against everything that nurses are taught, that they are there to save lives, and people will die during the course of the next few days.
People will die, and I do think the people striking should think about that. And as you say, it's a vocation, and I find it slightly irritating. I hear everything that Emma's saying, but I find it slightly irritating, this Pat Cullen calling it a tragic first. It's sort of either it's tragic. If it's so tragic, don't do it. You can't. No, but I think it's having your cake and eating it. It's you can't say nobody wants to do it. You sound like a sort of domestic abuser. Look what you've made me do.
I really would struggle to align a nurse desperately trying to get their pay and conditions up to someone beating their wife.
OK, well, look, Dame Ruth May, she is the chief nurse in England, and all of her counterparts across the four nations of the UK, they wrote to the RCN urging them not to do this, and that in itself is pretty powerful, isn't it?
That is a powerful statement. I think it's one they may come to regret, because they need to have a long-term, trusting relationship with the nurses. The nurses... This should be a negotiation. There should be ways of making sure that this doesn't happen, that nurses feel that they are going to be and are currently properly valued. Actually, I think publishing a letter like that makes that negotiation harder, not easier. It just feels like it's a strong-arming a situation where strong-arming doesn't feel like the right approach.
But they've had decades of experience as chief nurses. They can see the damage this is going to cause, and they've said explicitly in that letter, people will die as a result of this strike.
People will die as a result of the fact that we can't recruit nurses.
Well,
people are dying as a result of the fact that people are sitting in ambulances for 8 to 10 hours.
Emma, the strike is going to be made worse.
Long time before there was any strike.
The strike is going to be made much worse.
It's also geographically cruel because it will affect people in the poorest parts of Britain the worst. The northeast in particular.
Yes, low-paid nurses do live in poorer parts of Britain.
Well, this is true, yeah, but that's why people with desperate health conditions are going to suffer more.
And yet, the Scottish Government have managed to make a deal with the RCN, and although everyone quotes the unreasonable sort of 19% figure that the RCN have come up with, it's 7% or so that they've agreed up north of the border. I think 9% for those on the lowest pay grade. So there is wiggle room, clearly. Steve Barclay must be aware that he's not going to have to pay inflation-busting deal.
I'm not anti-nurse, I'm not,
no, not
despite comparing them to a domestic abuser. I'm not actually anti-nurse, but what I do take issue with is this sort of cant about how tragic it is. Because I think if you are going to go on strike, don't tell everyone about how you don't want to do it all the time.
But nobody wants to go on strike. It's a failure.
But Emma, isn't there a danger here? The nurses are going to surrender public goodwill when people start dying, operations cancelled. People have been waiting for an operation made for months.
I think people know how desperate the situation of the nurses are. That's why everyone was on their doorsteps 2 years ago applauding them.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I mean, the front of the mirror, you cared for us when we needed it most. Now the decent people of Britain say to our nurses, we're with you. That's the mirror you might expect.
I mean, even the Express.
Yeah. But I just wanted to say, on that letter that the nurses, the heads of nursing sent to the RCN, they talked about palliative care. I recently tragically lost a dear friend, 38 years old. She was receiving palliative care. It's her funeral on Monday. I imagine her when they're talking about people not being able to receive medical pain relief in their dying days during the strike today, and that makes me incredibly sad and, to be honest, a little bit angry. And I don't necessarily blame the nurses, but I don't think there should be people being put through situations like that.
I mean,
where they're dying
I
and they
too
can't get
have a
medication.
friend who, touch wood, she had a major operation 2 days ago, and they think, please God, they think they've sorted everything out. She will need long-term care, and she would say to me right now, I know because I know her inside out. I've known her since she was a little girl. She loves the nurses who are looking after her, and she wants them to be treated well and have the right paying conditions. And she, you know, yes, one day without care is awful and difficult and hard, but a lifetime without the kind of nursing care that we need, and the nurses treated in such a way that they don't leave, is what's needed.
Just on this, of course, because the Labour Party are making much political capital out of this, but Keir Starmer confessed the other day he wouldn't, in a million years, be paying them that sort of money.
I mean, Wes Streeting has said similar that they
Shadow
need to
Health
have
Secretary.
reform. It's not, I mean, I'm not here to parrot Labour Party lines.
No.
I believe that the nurses should get a 19% pay rise. I believe they should be able to go back to the standard of living they had 10 years ago. I don't think that's an unreasonable demand.
Just who's going to pay for
But I know that politically the Labour Party are not going to go as far as that, and that doesn't always work for them. Sometimes it does.
Yeah. Well, should we move on to something a little bit
Yeah.
less divisive? Harry and Meghan.
Oh, I think that's pretty divisive.
That's what I was thinking.
I can get the vision out of
the
Harry and
latest
Meghan.
instalment of the Great Whinge.
I think everyone's unanimous on that now. aren't
Yeah. The negative stories. The royals were planting negative stories about Harry and Meghan, according to Harry and Meghan, because Harry and Meghan have never planted negative stories about anyone. I do actually think they have a point that Wills and Kate did used to sort of out-PR them quite a lot. I don't know if you remember when they were getting in all the trouble over the jets, you know, the sanctity of lecturing people about climate change while taking private jets. And then sort of Wills and Kate had themselves photographed doing a Ryanair flight.
Only example. Everyone always quotes that one example.
I know. Well,
and I can't think of any others of them out PRing. I mean...
Well, you're going to call me a vile cynic, but the week after the Oprah interview, Kate did the laying of the flowers.
It was just a rant.
A rant, OK.
No attempt to challenge anything that was said.
Kate put the flowers. She was sort of a camera phone filmed her putting the flowers outside Sarah Everard's vigil.
What's wrong with that?
No.
It's a nice thing to do.
It's a very nice gesture, but do you not?
No, my
She went
colleague was there
privately.
from Sky, and he was off duty, and he happened to see her. She was with her close protection officer. I was working that day on that shift, and it was a huge scoop.
Yeah. There we go. I was being a cynic.
And she went incognito.
No, I promise you
that serves me right for being such a cynic.
I can verify that, actually.
But I think, well, what we can agree on is that Harry and Meghan are ghastly.
They are ghastly.
Don't care about any of them.
Oh, right.
Give us stuff.
Oh, you're not one of those dreary Republicans, are you, Emma?
I'm the dreariest of dreary Republicans.
No.
I couldn't, you know, I watch Emmerdale for my soap operas. I don't need the royal family.
Oh, no, the royal family's much more interesting than Emmerdale.
You take that, but now we're going to really fall out now.
I'll tell you one thing I've noticed. I watched some of it. One of the talking heads, their photographer, he's called Harriman, and he was at my school, and he was a vile bully at school. And so I hear him talking about racial justice in public now, and I think you were a bully at school.
Oh, interesting.
Very
Heard it here
interesting,
first.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait for the latest revelations. Emma, you're obviously going to have to... Your eyes are going to glaze over.
Not going to watch a second.
Your eyes are going to glaze over because we're going to be talking about it a lot.
Yes,
because it breaks at 8 o'clock.
It does, it breaks at 8. I watched 2.5 of the last ones, and halfway through the third, I was like, I'm bored now.
Yeah.
It sort of amazes... It manages to be hilarious and boring at the same time.
Yeah, it's more serious than that, though, because this is a man deliberately undermining his own family in public for vast amounts of money.
Do you think he's a sort of closet Republican? He doesn't really know it?
No, I think he's enthralled to his manipulative wife, and he's not very bright.
And you think she...
I think he's quite damaged, actually, and very emotional, like his mother was.
Yes.
And I think it's just, you know, Diana, God love her, she gave a real headache to the royal family.
She
I
did.
think Harry's going to do the same.
Yeah, yeah. Emma's eyes have glazed over even more.
On that note, we're going to take a very quick break.
Give me the dingles.
Straight back afterwards with the much highlighted already Maria Caulfield, Health Minister, to talk about nurses walking out at around 8 o'clock this morning. See you in a sec.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, nurses in England, Wales and Northern Ireland are striking today in the largest action of its kind in the history of the National Health Service.
In yesterday's PMQ, Sir Keir Starmer told Rishi Sunak it was a badge of shame for the government and accused the Prime Minister of being in hibernation instead of working to call off the strike.
The Royal College of Nursing says staff have been given no choice after the government said the 19% pay rise demand was simply unaffordable.
Well, we can speak now to Maria Caulfield, the Under-Secretary for Health and Social Care, who joins us this morning from Westminster. Good morning to you. Look, we've just been reviewing the papers, and I just want to show you the front of the Mirror. We are with you, the headline. Perhaps you might expect that from a left-leaning paper, but the headline for the Express, normally very loyal to the government, coming out with "Give nurses a deal and stop this madness." Have you lost public support on this?
Well, I think it is very disappointing to see strike action in 44 of the 215 trusts in England. Health has devolved matters, so as you said, the Welsh Government are also seeing strike action in all but one trust in Wales, and in Northern Ireland the government there are seeing strike action in all of these trusts. So whichever government is empowering those devolved nations, it is disappointing to see strike action today. It will mean around the cancellation around 70,000 operations, outpatients appointments and procedures, and that's not where we want to be.
Poll in the Daily Express, Minister, says 52% of people support the strike, 27% oppose it. That's huge. You have really lost, as Isabel said, the public on this one.
Well, we have got a difficult choice as a government. The RCN are asking for a 19% pay rise. That's £10 billion of funding that we would have to find to be able to pay for that. And as a government, we've only got three mechanisms to do that. It's not the government's money, it's the taxpayers' money. And we would either have to borrow to pay for that, and we all saw a few weeks ago what happens when governments can't afford to borrow money in terms of the impact it has on markets and interest rates. We either then tax people, and I think no one would want that at a time when people are already struggling with cost of living pressures, or we take it from existing services, and that would mean taking it from NHS budgets where we're trying to get through COVID backlogs. We're in the middle of winter pressures, and when we're opening up new surgical hubs, new diagnostic centres, new hospitals, that would make taking money from those projects. So we have a very difficult decision. A 19% pay rise is just not affordable.
Negotiate down from 19% quite clearly. 7% was what they landed on, with 9% for those on the lowest pay grade. If Steve Barclay had actually agreed to sit down with Pat Cullen and discuss pay, perhaps he would have found that out.
Well, Steve Barclay did meet with Pat
Yes,
Cullen,
he did, but he wouldn't talk about pay
They didn't come to
specifically,
an
which seems
agreement.
ridiculous during a pay negotiation.
Well, we have been pretty clear, and the Prime Minister was extremely clear yesterday. There's an independent pay review process that comes to decide where pay lands. We're not saying that nurses don't deserve a pay rise. That's why we gave 3% last year and no one else got a pay rise. The independent pay review body have recommended 4.5%, but for the lowest nurses it's over 9%, which we accepted in full. And so, you know, if you're going to have an independent pay review body that looks at things like inflation, staffing levels, retention issues, and negotiate that with the unions as well, then, you know, we have to respect that decision, and we have accepted it in full, as did the Labour government in Wales, as did the government in Northern Ireland as well.
Minister, you are a nurse, and I know you still do nursing shifts at your local hospital. What is the average pay for a nurse in England?
So when starting pay is 27,500. That goes up every year on an incremental basis, depending on your band. You can go from a band 5 as a newly qualified nurse right up to a band 7 or 8, which is a sister or clinical nurse specialist. So there's a range of pay scales. On an average, it's around the £30,000 mark, but then you've got overtime, unsocial hours, which can be added to that as well.
Could you manage on £30,000 a year, Minister?
Well, I was a nurse for 25 years, just before becoming an MP, and I got into politics during the pay cap and the pay freeze when our wages were frozen for years. I'm a member of the RCN, and when I was first elected, campaigned on scrapping the pay cap. So absolutely, I've done those long years. If I'm not elected again, I'll be going back to a nursing wage. So no one is a stronger advocate for nurses than myself. But also, when I'm doing my shifts, I hear from nurses, it's about the working conditions, the long hours. They don't have protected learning time like doctors do. There are issues around skill mix and workforce, which the government is now working on. So for me, when I'm meeting with colleagues and working shifts, pay is only a tiny proportion of some of the issues that they face, and that's what Steve Barclay wanted to negotiate with the RCN, to see if we can tackle some of those issues which would improve working conditions for nurses across the board.
I want to talk to you about the tragedy that was unfolding around this time yesterday morning whilst we were on air in the English Channel. I wonder if Rishi Sunak's suggestion that they'll look at legal routes once they've cleared this backlog actually needs to be brought forward, because at the moment it's going to see further deaths, isn't it? This is the second time we've seen a tragedy like this in the Channel. Until there are ways for these asylum applications to be processed in a timely and safe manner, people are going to die in horrific circumstances, aren't they?
Well, the Prime Minister has been in office for 7 weeks, and he's already set out his 5-point plan around dealing with this. And, you know, it was a terrible tragedy that we saw yesterday, and it absolutely emphasises why we need to end those small boat crossings. I'm a constituency MP for a coastal area on the Channel, and absolutely residents there want to see, you know, these people traffickers basically making money out of people and putting their lives at risk. And the 5-point plan, whether it's enforcement action, whether it's the small boats team that he's setting up, or whether it's the deal with the Albanian government so that we can return people as quickly as possible, and they know that the small boats route is not going to be a viable route, that's absolutely our priority. And as you said, the Prime Minister is looking at options for safe legal routes, but that is for genuine asylum seekers and not economic migrants who are using those small boats as well.
The Rwanda plan, Minister, is still months and months away. These boat crossings are going to continue. They're even yesterday, terrible weather. They still took that terrible risk. What can you do to stop anything in the short term?
So the Rwanda plan, the Prime Minister outlined that once we've got the decision from the courts, which we expect imminently, he wants to restart that plan straight away. He's also bringing forward legislation as soon as Parliament returns after Christmas to look at how we can stop people who try and come here illegally, allowing them to stay, and putting a cap on those numbers that we do accept for asylum claims. But some of the work has started already. So if you look at the small boats team that he's setting up to coordinate better the management of stopping those crossings, or the deal with the Albanian government where planes are already taking off deporting people who've come from Albania. They've already started taking off, and that will accelerate. And to clear that backlog of asylum claims by this time next year, that's a pretty ambitious plan. He's hit the ground running in terms of tackling those issues.
So can we just be quite clear there, Minister? You said the Rwanda scheme will be up and running, how soon are you saying?
Well, we're waiting for the court to rule on that, which we expect imminently. And the Prime Minister said that in his statement, that once that is resolved, his focus is on trying to restart that scheme. So we're talking weeks? Well, I think the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister have indicated that that would be pretty swift after the court ruling, which is what we're waiting for now.
And you talked about a cap there. I know the government are reluctant to give us a number, but you must have a figure in mind.
Well, I think they're working through that now. We have been pretty generous in terms of humanitarian access, whether it's people from Ukraine, from Afghanistan, or from Hong Kong.
Would you cap the numbers coming in from those countries as well?
Well, I think the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister are looking at that right now. They've been pretty clear they'll make that announcement fairly soon after the new year, because we know our services, whether it's schools, whether it's housing in particular, are struggling to cope with the sheer scale of the numbers that we're having to assess, and that's why they want to look at that, and they will be announcing that pretty soon in the new year.
OK, Maria Caulfield, we have to leave it there. Nurse and Under-Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. Thank you very much for braving the cold weather and speaking to us this morning.
Now, stay with us, because we're live in Dover with our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, as so many migrants are still fighting for their life after their boat capsized in the Channel yesterday. Migrants are fighting for their lives in hospital, and 4 have died after that boat capsized in the English Channel yesterday.
Good morning to you. It is 7 o'clock. It's Thursday, the 15th of December. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel Webster and Andrew Pearce. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Well, the Prime Minister has expressed his sorrow at the capsizing of that small boat in the Channel, telling MPs there's been a tragic loss of human life. 4 people died and many others remain in hospital after they were rescued from the freezing water.
And here in Dover, the authorities are waiting for first light to resume a full-scale search operation again for at least 4 migrants believed still to be missing, on top, of course, of the 4 who tragically died yesterday morning.
In other news, nurses in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will stage walkouts this morning in the largest strike action in NHS history. Nurse and Health Minister Maria Caulfield told us the strikes will have a significant impact on the health service.
It is disappointing to see strike action today. It will mean around the cancellation around 70,000 operations, outpatients appointments and procedures, and that's not where we want to be.
And another royal bombshell. Yes, it's them again. The second part of Harry and Meghan's explosive Netflix series drops in just an hour's time. We're counting down the minutes live from our royal reaction room.
And it's going to be France versus Argentina. The 2 former champions will battle it out in the World Cup final in Qatar this weekend after France beat Morocco 2-0 last night.
I didn't watch it. Did you?
You surprised me, Andrew. I thought you'd be avidly watching the football all evening. A lot of people were.
I'm sure they were.
Story.
Now, don't forget, you can get in touch the usual way via Twitter or email gbviews@gbnews.uk and let us know where you're watching or listening to us from.
So, leading our news this morning, 4 people have died after a migrant boat capsized in the English Channel yesterday. It is the worst tragedy in the Strait for over a year.
The dinghy carrying the migrants is believed to have suffered a puncture halfway across the Channel, around 12 miles from Dungeness.
39 people were pulled from the water, but 4 more are missing, according to survivors.
And this tragedy comes as we know more than 44,000 people have made that dangerous crossing this year so far. Our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, has more.
Just 13 months after 27 migrants drowned in the English Channel, another tragedy unfolding offshore. The sound of helicopters filling the night sky as Coast Guard and air ambulance assets scrambled to the scene. There were dozens of people in the water after their small migrant boat got into difficulties. Lifeboats, Border Force and Royal Navy vessels, along with their French counterparts, converged on an area about 8 miles off the Kent coast. Back in Dover, ambulances were on standby in the harbour to receive the casualties. As the morning progressed, the worst possible news, with the confirmation of multiple fatalities. Their bodies brought back to shore as the Home Secretary addressed Parliament on another Channel tragedy authorities had long warned about.
These are the days that we dread. Crossing the Channel in unseaworthy vessels is a lethally dangerous endeavour. It is for this reason, above all, that we are working so hard to destroy the business model of the people smugglers, evil, organised criminals who treat human beings as cargo.
Even as the massive air and sea search operation continued, UK and French authorities had to respond to several other small boat sightings, picking up and transferring hundreds of migrants to Dover as the criminal gangs took full advantage of calmer weather conditions in the Channel.
The brutal truth as well is that criminal gangs have made money from those lives that were lost today. They have profited as people have drowned. Day after day, week after week, criminal gangs are putting lives at risk for money.
This latest tragedy came less than a day after the Prime Minister announced a new multi-pronged plan he hoped would help reduce the number of small boat crossings. Although the authorities in France and the UK have long warned about the dangers of trying to negotiate the English Channel in a flimsy small inflatable, there is no end to the number of people who seem to be willing to take that risk. And as far as the criminal gangs are concerned, well, they're not going to stop what is a lucrative multi-million-pound criminal enterprise. Even in these winter months, the Channel migrants will keep coming. Whenever the criminal gangs see a weather window, they'll launch en masse from French beaches. And sadly, individual tragedies will do nothing to deter them.
Well, let's speak to Mark White, who joins us live from Dover this morning. And Mark, look, you've been covering the story right from when it first broke yesterday morning. And as you're saying, waiting now for First Light to resume that search for a number of people believed to still be in the water.
Yeah, sadly, after all this time, they're not going to be pulling anyone alive from the water, but clearly the rescue services still want to go out to find those that are unaccounted for. Now, we believe up to 4, some reports suggesting potentially more. We know that this incident unfolded around 3 a.m. yesterday. This scallop trawler that was out in the Channel, the crew were awoken by the sound of screams. They looked over the side of the vessel and they found 5 people clinging to the side of their vessel, and then they could see this partially deflated small boat just nearby as well. So they started scrambling to get the people on board. They did a really valiant effort. They managed to rescue 31 of the migrants, quite a number who had actually been in the water. The remainder were picked up from the water by lifeboats, Border Force vessels, Royal Navy vessels that all descended on that area to help. And as I say, the authorities still believe that up to 4 people are missing, because they've been speaking to those on board, and the count that they are fairly confident with is that there were 47 people on board that small boat. That's not unusual. It's normally between 40 and 50 that cram onto these inflatables to make the journey across the Channel. And Of course, they made the journey yesterday because with 2 days of bad weather, 500 odd made the journey over the weekend when there was a weather window. 2 days of bad weather, Monday, Tuesday, then in the early hours of yesterday morning, because conditions calmed a bit, these boats were pushed out into the middle of this very busy shipping lane, and although it was relatively calm off the Normandy coast, when they got mid-channel, we're told there were swells of up to 2 metres in height. It just shows you how things can change in the middle of the English Channel. But that's not going to deter them, sadly. They're still going to keep coming.
This news of this tragedy in the middle of the Channel would presumably get back to Calais, to the migrants in Calais. It doesn't act as any deterrent?
No, not at all. I mean, you know, people had thought, they'd hoped that 13 months ago, when we saw 27 confirmed dead, actually the total was well over 30 who'd been on that boat, but their bodies were never recovered. That news got back to Calais. People here on this side of the Channel, authorities in France, had hoped, well, maybe the criminal gangs will think twice about this. Maybe the migrants themselves will think it's just not worth the risk. But that's not proven to be the case. In fact, in the year since, we know that double the number of people who've come across the Channel. It stands at 45,000 people now who've come across this year, with still a good couple of weeks or so left to run in the year. And as I say, the weather conditions today aren't really conducive to getting boats across. We might still get one or two that the people smugglers push out into the sea, but we're told that Saturday it's going to be calm again, so expect another surge, because what happens in the winter months in particular is that they're stacking up effectively, waiting to get across, because you can get 5-6 days of really bad weather where it's impassable, and then the second things calm down, they surge en masse off those beaches in Normandy, unlike the summer, of course, where you can get a week or two of really good weather and then maybe 200 or 300 come over each day over the course of quite a few days.
Do we know any more about the profile, if you like, of the people who were on the dinghy? There were reports initially of some families, perhaps children, but a lot of the pictures, certainly, of the rescue seemed to be young men.
Yeah, I'd be slightly cautious about suggesting that there were women and children on board, because it is a well-worn tactic of those on board these vessels when they want help from the rescue services to say there are women and children on board. Okay. What normally happens is the vessels get into UK waters if they're not intercepted at that point by Border Force or lifeboats. Then they're told by the people smugglers to dial 999. When they get a phone signal from the UK side, speak to the Coast Guard, tell them they're in distress. And of course the UK authorities have to respond to it as if it is a maritime emergency. And that's what happens, as I say. So it's perfectly plausible that whoever was on board the vessel was telling the charity in Normandy that there were women and children, to ensure that there was a quicker response. I mean, the truth is there will always be a quick response from the rescue services if they fear life is in peril. It doesn't matter if they're women, children or men. And yeah, you're right, the images certainly suggested the vast majority, if not all those on board, were young men.
Right, thank you very much for keeping us posted. And I know you'll update us if there is any more news on this tragic story. Lots of you at home getting in touch via email and Twitter. This one from Karen. This is the French sending people to their death. They have allowed this to happen for far too long.
Yeah, and Barry in Alicante says France has an obligation to process people seeking asylum. They're to blame for these deaths.
John says, we're to blame for those deaths. We make it such a magnet to come here. They'll risk their lives to cross a freezing sea so that they can get to the land of gold.
Yeah, and Vera says, instead of paying £5,000 to the smugglers, why don't these people pay a lawyer with money to come legally? Very interesting point, Vera.
Yeah, you're cleverer. Listen, keep those thoughts coming in. We're going to turn our attention now to the other big story of the day. Part 2 of Harry and Meghan's docu-series is due to be released within the next hour.
There they'll be in their lovely £15 million house whinging about how terrible their life is. In fact, I read, actually, they weren't filmed in their own house, they were filmed in a £27 million house, which presumably was loaned to them.
Oh, well, it wasn't very nice.
No, it wasn't my sort. Life is tough if you're a Sussex, Duke and Duchess of Sussex, isn't it? Joining us now to preview the second instalment of the Great Whinge Fest, which will be released in under an hour, is our very own royal reporter, Cameron Walker. Morning, Cameron.
Good morning, Andrew, and welcome to GB News' Royal Reaction Room. The second week running I have been in a cinema for this, and from 8 o'clock I'm going to be joined by a panel of royal experts, and we'll bring you the latest analysis from the final instalment of Harry and Meghan's Netflix documentary series. Now, the first 3 episodes very much focused on Harry and Meghan's war on the British media, as well as telling their love story in their own words, showing a number of personal photographs during those first 3 episodes. And it got up until the point of Harry and Meghan's wedding in 2018. So here's a little sneak peek of what to expect from the final 3 episodes.
It was a real kind of war against Meghan, and I've certainly seen evidence that there was negative briefing from the palace against Harry and Meghan to suit other people's agendas.
Meg became this scapegoat for the palace, and so they would feed stories on her, whether they were true or not, to avoid other less favourable stories being printed.
You would just see it play out. Like a story about someone in the family would pop up for a minute, and they go, "We got to make that go away." But there's real estate on a website homepage. There is real estate there on a newspaper front cover, and something has to be filled in there about someone royal.
This barrage of negative articles about the breakdown of the relationship with her father was the final straw in a campaign of negative, nasty coverage about her.
Well, this is going to turn into a bit of a headache for the royal family, to be perfectly honest. I think these final 3 episodes are very much going to be focusing on their experience as working members of the royal family, as well as Meghan's lawyer was alluding to there, what she claims that she has evidence that Buckingham Palace or people with inside Buckingham Palace were leaking negative stories about Harry and Meghan to the press in order to make less favourable stories about other members of the royal family essentially go away. Now, the papers are very much questioning that allegation this morning. Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace are not commenting, and other royal correspondents are claiming that at that time, Harry and Meghan's press team were very much firefighting, desperately trying to keep negative stories about the couple out of the press. And it was only around 6 months after the wedding, where members of staff started to leave for unknown reasons, that these negative stories started to leak through. I will be here from 8 o'clock with all the analysis. All the royal experts will be joining me here in GB News' Royal Reaction Room, so make sure you stay tuned for that.
A lively morning for you. Thanks very much indeed, Cameron. From that Royal Reaction Room, we're going to cross live to LA and speak to our showbiz reporter, Kinsey Schofield. A very good morning to you, Kinsey. Look, we were in touch, weren't we, during the course of the week discussing the first 3 episodes. And look, I have to say, I enjoyed seeing a bit of the love story, whether or not, and you were saying it's nonsense they didn't meet on Instagram, it was an introduction. That aside, I quite enjoyed seeing a human relationship blossoming. It was quite sweet. I admit it. But now they're getting personal. Now they're naming names. They're going after William, the future king. And all these allegations again towards the press. It's very simple. Just show us the evidence.
Yeah, I think that's my biggest issue with Harry and Meghan. They're so vague about these accusations. They throw out these, it's the royal racism accusation is another one of these things. Tell us specifics or don't say it at all, because it just feels like they like the gossip and the controversy and the whispers and the chaos. And that's not what the royal watching community enjoys at all. That's not what we're about. And so I completely agree with you. This does seem like the next few episodes are going to be really nasty and really ugly, but I feel like the royal family has survived worse. Is Isabel. You know, I think if they can continue with the never complain, never explain, that they will end up on the other side of this, the winners, because Americans are really starting to question their integrity. Well, Harry and Meghan, they're questioning their integrity. A lot of these stories aren't adding up. And, you know, Howard Stern, Saturday Night Live, these huge liberal media outlets and personalities are turning against them.
I was going to ask you, because, of course, she's American. I can remember being in the United States on holiday, and I was at the Hearst Museum, and the guy said, "You're English. We Americans are so thrilled we're going to have part of your royal family with Meghan Markle." And I said how welcome she is, and we're looking forward to becoming part of the royal family. But it's not going... This isn't playing so well for them in the States now.
You're absolutely right. We loved Meghan. I had somebody tweeting me my videos from years ago where I'm defending them, and I was like, this just proves my point that the media loved Meghan and Harry at the beginning, and everything turned south once we started hearing whispers about abusive behavior to staff and the hypocrisy of having this, you know, lavish baby shower with all of these celebrities that you hardly know, and jumping on planes when telling us all that we need to be more cautious about environmental issues. It's the hypocrisy that's turned people against the Sussexes. And I think that ultimately Americans will side with the British royal family because we're starting to see through some of the lies.
You've been making me laugh with some of your posts on social media. Yesterday, the Waleses posted their lovely Christmas card, and you just put the caption in capitals, "Too formal," because Meghan had said she wasn't prepared for their sort of coldness behind the scenes as well as in front of the camera. And you just making the point, no, these guys are normal as well.
You know, the Waleses own denim too, Meghan. You do not hold the monopoly on denim jeans, okay? Like, we all have some denim in our closet. But I'm sorry, I just get the sense with stories like that they're the bad guys and we're the good guys. We're super relatable. They're not, you know, and I just don't like that at all. I don't really believe that narrative.
Did you know one of the things that irritated me most about the video, the programme last week, was the suggestion that they're the only royals who married for love, that other people married people because they fitted the mould.
Did they mean, though, Charles and Diana? Well, because everyone can see what a disaster that was. Do you think that's what they meant?
Or do they mean Edward and Sophie? Very happy marriage. Princess Anne seems to be pretty happy with her husband. And William and Kate seem really happy.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, your father married his very controversial mistress. That is for love. That is for love, love, love. And that was a hard line to swallow, too. I mean, Harry and Meghan are martyrs. They apologize about nothing, and they blame everyone else. And it is... I mean, to watch it, somebody said to me, it's propaganda. I said, it's an infomercial. This is giving Fergie on QVC selling a blender vibes, okay? This is infomercial.
Yeah, I think we just need to screenshot the moment where Meghan does the mocking curtsy and Harry's face. Because that, to me, is where the cracks are going to emerge. In the Sussex.
He was
mock everything he is. He is a royal through and through.
And he was mocking the late Queen. She was mocking the late Queen. And I suspect Harry wanted that scene pulled from the Netflix documentary. And Netflix said, on your bike, we're paying you a lot of money. We want every bit of it.
That I have heard that is one of the scenes that they wanted removed. And what makes me so upset over that is I know that it's not been confirmed, but Giles Brandreth is a very close friend of the royal family. Let's imagine that they knew that Queen Elizabeth had bone cancer. Let's just imagine that they knew that. I mean, that to me, that makes me sick. It breaks my heart that you would think that would be appropriate to do when, I mean, even if they didn't, she's an elderly woman, you know, in her twilight years. It's cruel and it's not cute. And I know she thinks it's cute and self-deprecating, but it's really disrespectful to her husband's culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, 38 minutes until 3 more series drop. Kinsey, it's going to be a busy night for you, busy morning for us. We'll say goodbye to you for now. Thank you very much indeed for all your updates.
And now, after the break, we're going to be talking about the nurses' strike, which is taking place around the country today. The first ever nurses' strike, that is.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back at 7:26. Still to come on the programme this morning.
As thousands of nurses walk out in the biggest strike action in the history of the NHS, we're going to be speaking a little later to the Royal College of Nurses Regional Director as she prepares to join the picket line. Can you imagine? Nurses on a picket line.
And the countdown's on. You can see a little clock on the bottom of your screen there. At 8 o'clock, we will be going live to the GB News Royal Reaction Room as we dissect part 2 of Harry and Meghan's Netflix docuseries.
And don't forget you can join in all of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews.
So the largest nursing strike in NHS history, well, the first of its kind for the RCN, is set to take place today across England, Wales and Northern Ireland, with tens of thousands of staff expected to walk out this morning.
Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, told Rishi Sunak that today's nurses' strike is a badge of shame on the government, and he accused the Prime Minister of being in hibernation. That was in yesterday's rather stormy Prime Minister's questions.
Well, let's speak to former aide to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and it should be said also to Steve Barclay, who is now Health Secretary. Leon Emirali joins us in the studio this morning. We spoke to a member of the government who is still a nurse in her spare time just under an hour ago. And she was saying that she really does believe that the public is still on the government's side in all of this, that they're asking for too much money. Has she got it right?
I think she has to an extent. I think the country feels that they are being held hostage for a pay dispute between nurses and the government. And look, nurses are popular. They have that residual popularity through all the amazing work they do. But I do think that 19% strikes people as being excessive. I don't think there's anyone in the country receiving a 19% pay rise in this environment, and that's too much.
But Leon, we know that's not what the RCN are expecting, and we know in Scotland, the Scottish Government, it's different, of course, health is devolved in the regions. The Scottish Government settled at 7%.
Well, it's a bad negotiation. They've gone in too high and they've alienated the government. And I think that ultimately, yes, of course, you start high and then you move low. You have to be realistic from the outset. And I think that's where they've failed, because there's too much of a gap between 19% and 7%. I think they should have gone in lower initially.
You work closely with Steve Barclay when he was Chief Secretary of Treasury. He's now the Secretary of State for Health. How resolute is he going to be on this? Is this a gut thing for him, or is he just following the Prime Minister's orders, there's no more cash?
Well, look, Steve Barclay is a pragmatist. He's someone who looks at the numbers, who looks at the data. He won't make decisions based on emotion. And I think he's cognizant of the wider economic environment we're operating in. So I do think he's going to be hard-nosed, and I think ultimately that's his job to do so.
Leon, we're having some problems with your microphone. We're going to do a quick news bulletin, and in that time, hopefully we can fix it and come back to you, if that's all right. We'll be straight back to Leon Emerali. He's not switched on, perhaps. Who knows? Anyway, let's take a look, shall we, at some of the top stories this hour. And as we were just discussing, nurses are on strike today. It is the largest action of its kind in NHS history. The Royal College of Nursing has asked, as we were discussing, for a 19% pay rise, a demand the government is saying is unaffordable. Well, the RCN says it will still be staffing emergency cancer surgery, and clinically urgent cases will go ahead.
And the government says significant progress is being made in how the criminal justice system responds to rape cases. According to a review from last summer, the pledge to more than double the number of rape cases reaching court by Christmas is now within reach. It comes amid a serious backlog of cases which the government has blamed on the barrister strike.
Thousands of people in Shetland are facing a fourth day without power as snow and freezing temperatures continue to grip the UK. Almost 3,000 homes have been left without electricity when heavy snow fell on cables earlier this week. More than 120 extra engineers were drafted in to help reconnect. I'm pleased to say we've sorted out the microphone problem. We've got a new microphone on Leon Emerali, who stays with us here in the studio. Just to recap then briefly some of the ground we covered there, you were talking about how the public may well be entitled to feel as though patients, people receiving treatment within the NHS, are being held hostage in a pay negotiation.
Yeah, I think that's the feeling amongst the country right now, is that, you know, ultimately, if someone gets ill over Christmas, if someone slips on the ice or, God forbid, something worse happens, they don't necessarily feel they're going to have the support of the NHS that their taxpayers' money, you know, should be for. So I think there is a sense that the country feels as though they are being caught in the middle of this pay dispute between nurses and government, and that isn't going to last very long.
Won't the government be worried by a headline like this in the Daily Express, the most loyal paper of them all, give nurses a due and stop this madness? Won't that be worrying for the government?
I think it will be worrying for the government now, but let's wait and see what happens once these strikes take place, and whether or not that public will or the will of the Daily Express and other newspapers lasts, because I do think if there is a tragedy, if there is an avoidable death due to this strike, then I think the public are going to decide whether it's the nurses to blame or the government.
And all four chief nurses have said, haven't they, in an open letter to the Royal College of Nursing, people will die as a result of this strike action.
It's devastating to think that that might be the case, and I think that is what's at stake here. This isn't train drivers going on strike and you might miss your train to the office Christmas party. This is about getting the critical care that people need if and when they, you know, that they fall ill. So I think that is absurd, and I think there has to be some sort of middle ground where the government and the nurses can get together and sort this out.
We spoke to Maria Caulfield a little bit earlier. We also talked to her about the migrant crisis. Really interesting to hear her talking about the deterrent factor, the fact that this tragedy yesterday morning didn't stop a further 6 boats crossing yesterday. We know that it's been something like 43,000 so far this year. And Andrew was asking her what the latest was, how soon it is that these flights could be setting off to Rwanda. And her belief was that it could be in a matter of weeks.
Well, I think that's optimistic.
That's what I think.
We've seen this go through the courts. We've seen this go through a variety of different hurdles, and we're still not there. I think that something has to be done. The Rwanda policy is popular with the public, and I think the government see that, understand that. They're trying to strike a similar deal with Albania, and I think if they can get that right, and they're seen as taking action on the migrant issue, then they could well be in for an electoral bonus. But I do think the tragedy in the Channel is speeding up those matters.
She was talking about the courts will rule, but the European Court of Human Rights is never going to allow this policy, even though Denmark are going down the same route. Hasn't the government got to face up to the fact, we know the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, that's what she really wants. We've got to come out of this European Court of Human Rights, haven't we? So the law is set by the British judiciary. It's quite capable of doing a good job, the British judiciary. It's well beating.
Well, indeed, on that particular issue, Andrew, yes, you're right. It would be easier for them just to remove themselves from the European Court of Human Rights so they can get on with doing this.
What's the downside, then?
The downside is that the European Court of Human Rights touches many different areas of life in the UK, and there could well be some issues where, we are not necessarily on the same page as other allies of ours in the European Union.
Like what issues?
Well, like issues around working conditions, around issues such as people being able to come into this country in legal way. And I think we have to be mindful that it isn't just about illegal migration here. There's other areas where that touches.
OK. Leon Emerali, really good to get your perspective. Thanks very much.
Great to see you again.
For
Thanks.
joining us this
Glad he
morning.
sorted his mic out.
Yes, I'm glad. I'm sorry about that. Should we have a little look at some of the views? Because lots of you have been getting in touch with us this morning on a whole range of topics. On the issue of the strikes, Vincent says they've been caused by the power companies and petrol suppliers allowed by the government to get excessive profits.
Yeah, and Simon says nurses should get more money. This government finds money for so many other countries in the world but doesn't look after our own. Well, that's the international aid budget, of course.
Leanne says what nobody in the media seems to appreciate is that vast members of the British population earn less than all the strikers. Try earning $18,500 per year, working full-time, no additional pay for weekends and evenings. And I suppose something that we often forget in all of this is the comparison between private and public sector. You forget how good the package is in the public sector in terms of maternity leave, in terms of pensions, holiday, etc. The sort of thing that people in the private sector can only dream of.
And I was looking at the terms and conditions of the rail workers. They get free rail travel, they got great pensions, and which you don't get in the private sector.
But do we feel that way when we think about the nurses? It's such an emotive topic, isn't it?
They
so many people want our nurses well paid and well rested. As you say, the Express, a very right-leaning and loyal government paper, saying, come on, just give them a pay rise. Let us know your thoughts this morning.
Now, it's sport. Paul Coit says to discuss the latest sport and sports stories, and apparently that World Cup is still going on.
Yeah, it's nearly finished.
Is it?
But it's a big deal because it was a bit of a derby last night, wasn't it, I suppose, if you think of it, sort of, Paris was really engaged, and so much so there were riots, I believe, but we'll get on to that in a minute. France, Morocco, really tense, actually.
It was
Wasn't
really
an easy win
tense.
for France.
It was really tense. Morocco, who've been very much the dark horses of the tournament. Nobody expected Morocco to do as well, but we talked about it yesterday and how well that they've done right the way through to the semi-finals, the furthest an African side has ever got in the World Cup. And you know what? I used the phrase, they gave it a good go. They did, they gave it a really good go, but France came out on top. So it's going to be a France-Argentina final on Sunday. So they're talking, there's always the Messi versus Mbappe, although now this is only just coming through, is that we're hearing there's a chance that the Ballon d'Or winner, Karim Benzema, if you remember we talked about him when he won the Ballon d'Or just a month or so ago, greatest player in the world that he won, there's a chance that he can actually come back and play for France.
Right, oh.
So Karim Benzema, so this is the finest player in the world, and he was injured and plays for France.
Oh.
So there's a 26-man squad that is announced, but then he was announced that he was
I thought this bloke Messi was the greatest player on the planet.
Well, you know
who
what?
plays for Argentina.
I could say that he is the greatest player on the planet, but the Ballon d'Or winner is the man that wins the world's greatest player at the time.
Right.
It's you know.
OK. For England, thinking pragmatically, isn't it better if France win? Because then we can say we were dumped out of the tournament by the world champion.
You know what? There's lots of ways of looking at it, but none help, really. Andrew.
Oh, OK.
Nothing really helps.
Are you grieving still?
Yeah, I am. You know what? It's taken a little longer than I thought it was going to take. It was earlier. How do you feel about it? Did you get involved golf.
No,
Did you feel
I was
it
going
upset
to. No,
you?
I was going to watch the semi-final, but I was at a very nice charity
You were
dinner.
washing your hair.
A very nice
You went
charity
to the
dinner
ballet instead, didn't you? That's
during
what
the
you
match.
did. You went to the ballet.
Now, is it true Harry Kane's ball that he kicked for the penalty is still on its way to the moon?
Now, I'm not even going to have any of that.
I think it landed on the moon.
Don't
He
start
blew it
giving me any
so
of that
high.
nonsense. You can say it about anybody else, but not about Harry Kane because we love him. It was
Okay,
a
we love
very
him.
unfortunate slip.
Right.
But anyway, so the final is on Sunday, and Benzema could be back. There's a 20, and Didier Deschamps, who is the manager, is the French manager. He was asked about it yesterday, and he said, "It is a question I don't want to answer."
And there was a bit of argy-bargy in Paris.
Yeah, well, it got quite serious, actually. In fact, I think a little boy...
Yeah, and Montpellier as well. There's been some riots.
it's a
So,
lucky
yeah,
part of Paris
it's
too.
pretty nasty between Moroccan fans and French fans. So, yeah, there has been some trouble there. Which
Do you know, I had
That's in Brussels.
I had a short break a few
And in
weeks.
Belgium as well, yeah.
I had a short break a few weeks ago in Bruges, which is lovely, and we thought we'd escape completely the football. There were blooming riots in Belgium because they weren't doing very well. I know. I didn't even know Belgium had a team. Apparently, they were ranked second and got dumped even quicker than England.
I could tell you about Belgium, but
Could you?
Belgium are great players, but they really did not do very well. See, the thing about Belgium and the difference between them and Morocco, Belgium, all superstars, didn't play well as a team.
Right.
Morocco, less so. They played as a team. They desperately wanted to win, and that's so important. So if you've got the talent and the passion as well...
But I do like that the final is between the two best teams, really, Argentina and France. It feels like cream always rises to the top.
Well, I did tip Argentina to win it.
Oh,
from the
he
start.
looked
I just
at
want to make that quite
right.
clear
and
right
did you
now.
say against France in the final?
Well, I did say against Germany in the final.
Oh, that went well.
So that was
Who's going to win then, seeing as you're so sure?
Oh, no, I'm not. Well, it's got to be... I've got to stick with Argentina.
OK, go for Argentina.
And then there's the third-place playoff, which Morocco play against Croatia, which was the first game that they played against each other at the start of the World Cup. But third-place playoff, nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cared even when England were in that playoff last time.
That's right. It is right, because... They always say, oh, well, whoever comes second, nobody remembers them. Well, you kind of do the second, but when it comes to third place, it's a complete waste of time.
Well,
so that's on Saturday.
I'm going to predict France win.
You're going to predict France?
Yeah.
I'm frankly more interested in the World Darts Championship.
Oh, go on then.
Not at Alexandra Palace.
Oh, please tell me you're not into darts.
No, I'm not. What was that? What was that guy? Jockey
Wilson.
Yeah.
Jockey Wilson,
he
the
was a
Scots legend. I think he won the world title in 82, 83.
Yeah.
And darts has moved on a lot in the years.
Because women compete against men now, don't they?
Well, we do. I mean, the thing is, there's three women that are in the finals, and one of them, Bo Greaves, who you spoke to. I think it was a few weeks ago.
Oh.
Both of you spoke to Bo.
We did.
Oh, yes, we did.
Yeah.
I remember
I
every
think
word
you asked
of it.
her about Jockey Wilson as well,
We
Andrew.
did. I think I did. But it's the only darts player I've ever heard of.
She's 18 years old.
She's brilliant.
She is unbelievable. She's such a great
So
talent.
she's going to be at Alexandra Palace?
Absolutely.
Oh.
So she's going to be playing at Alexandra Palace.
We need to get her back on.
There you go. See, I can see.
How long does this championship go on for?
It will be... Well, it takes a break at Christmas, and then it comes back after.
Oh, well, that works out perfectly.
How long?
You can invest yourself in that one. Now the World Cup's over, there's more
How many weeks is it
fantastic
going on
darts.
for?
It's about 3 years, the actual competition. No, we've got until Christmas, then there's the break, and then we get towards the final after that. But it's a great event, Alexandra Palace, the Ali Pali, and then people dress up in fancy dress.
Right.
They do that at all darts.
Do you still get 50 points for a bullseye?
You do get 50 for a
You didn't know I knew all this technical stuff
good.
about darts.
Yeah.
This is where the
20
Swindon
double
upbringing
top.
didn't do you wrong.
20 at the top.
Very good.
Above a 1.
Yeah.
And is that 40 points?
No, 40 is the double top.
Double top, there
60,
we are.
so you need to go for the treble 20s.
Treble 20.
And the thing is, there's great callers these days. I don't know if there's a guy, and virtually there's all the 180 and all that.
Yeah.
And there's another guy who almost sings what he does.
Right.
What's his name? I think it's Bevan, his name is, and he is terrific.
I probably won't watch it, Paul, but I know you can keep us up to
I've tried
date.
to sell it to you. I've tried my very best.
We've got to move on. Much as I enjoyed that was
Joy
very
to see you.
entertaining.
Good to see
Probably
you
not
too,
the
Paul.
reasons Paul
I know,
wanted, but
I know.
anyway, Paul Coit, lovely to see you, and I'll see you at our Christmas lunch.
I will look forward to that, yes.
Right. Stay with us, because we're going through the papers with Freddie Gray from The Spectator and Emma Burnell, the playwright and journalist, after this.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not
the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236. And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back. You're watching GB News Breakfast with Isabel Webster and Andrew Pearce, and we're going to bring you up to date with today's front pages.
Let's start with The Sun. Their headline, £5,000 ticket to death as 4 migrants die in the freezing channel.
And The Times also focuses on the 4 dead in the channel after the migrant dinghy sank. They also commemorate King Charles. It's his first 100 days as our monarch. Long live the King.
Yeah, long live the King. Here's the Telegraph. It says the damage of nurses' strikes will get worse as they look ahead to even more walkouts in January.
And in The Guardian, there's a scathing report which condemns the police for victim blaming in the rape crisis with persistent failings in the criminal justice system.
And the Metro's focusing on Zara Alina's killer, who was yesterday given 38 years in jail for her murder. They say she was just on her way home.
And in The Star, they say, tough luck, kid. Your presents have been eaten by foxes as animals feast on undelivered Christmas gifts at post office depots as the strike makes its impact.
Time to go through the papers now with the Deputy Editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray, and the journalist and playwright, Emma Burnell. A very warm welcome back to both of you. Emma, you want to start with this really harrowing story, which I found myself watching some of the CCTV just before going to bed, which is a really bad idea. Really powerful words from the judge yesterday when she said to the perpetrator, you had the element of strength and surprise, but in every other way, she was better than you. And I thought that was really powerful from the judge.
No, absolutely.
I mean, Zaralina was just walking home. She wasn't even the first woman that he targeted. She was just the one he targeted, I hate to use the phrase, but most successfully. It's absolutely horrific. And I think it really does, with that story and the story in The Guardian about rape convictions, I think that's bookended this real sense, and you and I were discussing it off air, Isabel, that there's just this constant low-level fear that women have, and a guardedness and a wariness and a being aware that I think some men just aren't conscious that that's how women are feeling nearly all the time. We're not feeling it on, the highest level, but we are always feeling it. One of a tweet that I sent a few years ago went absolutely viral around the world, and it said, "We absolutely know that it's not all men. It's just that we never know which men it is, and that's the problem."
Do you, as a woman, feel frightened, insecure, walking home at night, if maybe you've left a tube station or a railway station?
I mean, I'm an idiot. I know from my tweets that your viewers very much agree with that. But
They love you.
But I am kind of a bit bolshy.
Right.
So I will walk any time of the day or night from the tube to my house. I famously once walked from my friend's house to mine at 2 a.m. through the red light district of my area. And I was stopped 11 times.
Right.
And I was wearing a jumper and DM boots. I was not dressed for business. And you're constantly aware. I am not constantly frightened, I'm constantly aware. I look for the shadow behind me. I make sure that someone overtakes me when there is somebody coming up behind me. I will slow down to make sure that happens. I have my keys. I'm very aware of where they are in my pocket. That's probably as much to just reassure myself than I could actually do anything about it. I'm aware that anyone could overpower me very easily. I don't let it affect my life as much as I can possibly help, but that awareness is constant.
What I find really odd, sometimes walking home late from the tube, I'm walking behind someone, they're on their phone, looking at their phone, or they've got headphones on and they're listening to music, and I think, are you mad?
I listen to music.
People could be coming up behind you. Male and female.
But I tell you, Andrew, from very, very strong experience, I know when someone's coming up behind me, no matter how loud the music is in my ears, because, as I say, you look for the shadow,
Right.
you just have a sense, you can feel when someone's
Wow,
behind you. But, I mean, again, as I say, I'm not going to let my life be diminished. I want to listen to my podcast, I want to listen to my music when I'm walking down the street, and I don't think it's their choice to stop me doing that.
And these things are thankfully incredibly rare. But that being said, I mean, I've had the misfortune of covering lots of murder trials in my time and been in court with lots of murderers. I was absolutely astounded and actually really surprised that Jordan McSweeney refused and was granted his wish to not sit in the dock and face his justice. It's
been going on for years.
Absolutely shouldn't be allowed.
They should be dragged into the court to face the accused, to face the victim's family.
He didn't want to go through the trauma of
reliving it.
Hello.
There are people going through trauma, and it ain't you, bruv.
Yeah, it's Zara Alina's family
And
who were
actually, it's
presumably in
part
court.
of the process for the family to actually see him.
I agree.
Even if he doesn't show any remorse, you just know that justice has been served.
And isn't it a sign that they're allowed to do this? That yet again, it's not about the victim, it's about the perpetrator.
Absolutely.
We're always worrying about the wretched perpetrator.
Perpetrators are victims,
Since when?
Since when, exactly?
Since our judiciary it's just, we're feather bedding everybody. Look, Freddie, in the Express, some good news at last, economically.
Inflation is coming down.
But it is good news, isn't it?
It is good news, but I think that there's this slight tendency to think inflation coming down means inflation's sort of stopped. It's still pretty high. It's 10%.
And food inflation is particularly high.
16%, that's going up. And, we've got the rate rise today. That's something to look forward to. The Fed set it at 0.5%. There's people guessing as to whether it's going to be 0.75% or 0.5% for the Bank of England.
I think it'll be 0.5.
I think 0.5. We just tend to follow the American.
It was also just unusually big.
Well, yeah, although, I mean, if Downing Street have anything to do with it, they are keen to sort of, pursue this very aggressive line on inflation. The real worry is that we're not going to get this inflation under control. Even though it is coming down, we're not going to get inflation under control without large amounts of unemployment. That's the real fear.
Which, of course, went up again last month.
Which is what happens when you have massive inflation. When you have an inflationary spiral, you then get unemployment, which is awful, mass unemployment.
But it's rising from an historic low, Freddie.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. So, I mean, fingers crossed that doesn't happen. But we've got to find a way of somehow getting inflation under control. Rate rises at the moment don't seem to be doing it enough.
Have you done all your Christmas shopping? Have you sent your Christmas cards?
Well, I have a deal with my sister now that we don't need more stuff. So I took my sister and my niece out to the theatre for their Christmas present last night.
That's
We had
nice.
the most wonderful time.
What did you see?
We went to see Wicked, which is wicked.
Well, that's just as well, because no foxes or rats can nibble your tickets to the theatre.
They could not.
Unlike the rest of our Royal Mail, which is stacking up, which is the story you've chosen in The Star, Emma.
Yeah, I'm slightly baffled. I get how the mice get in, because those little gits get in everywhere. I think I can say gits.
You just did.
Yeah.
But foxes, surely these depots are firm enough to be able to keep foxes out, you'd think. I mean, they should be... I don't imagine the security staff are part of the same union, so I'm slightly surprised that there aren't people sort of guarding against this within the warehouses. I think this might be a story being released to try and spur us in a certain direction on the thought about the posties strike.
But you know what I think about...
don't go on strike.
But you know what I think about the post strike? I mean, if ever there was a justification for the expression turkeys voting for Christmas, postal workers striking during the Christmas period, Christmas cards are not going to be sent again by so many people I know haven't sent Christmas cards this year. They won't next year. There's going to be less work for the posties.
Well, I work for a magazine, and delivery is very important for us, and it's affecting us very badly. Yeah, I think you're right. I think they're not like nurses in that they're not going to get that sort of public sympathy.
No, they're sending 60% fewer letters. We're sending 60% fewer letters already. What's this going to do to...
I know, so you have to hand deliver your Christmas cards this year. Freddie, I wanted to get onto the story. We haven't got time, but please can we touch on Rishi Sunak declaring that Michael Bublé is his Christmas favourite?
Yeah.
I have to say I'm with him on that.
Oh, I was going to say I think he's determined to lose this election.
I mean, talk about the bland leading the blind.
Well,
I've been to a Michael Bublé concert. I nearly fell asleep. It was so boring.
Oh, good. I was glad you said.
All right,
he is
then.
not Frank Sinatra.
Well, there's lots of people with you, Isabel.
Yeah,
He's not
I
Frank
know.
Sinatra.
He's a bit of a dish as well. But anyway, we're going to say goodbye to Emma Burnell and Freddie Gray for now. More from both of them after 8:30.
But stay with us. It's almost 8 o'clock. You know what that means? The next instalment of Harry and Meghan's Netflix Wingerfest. Straight after this.
Good morning and welcome to your latest weather update with me, Annie Shuttleworth, from the Met Office. It's going to be another cold day out there today, though many areas will see some sunshine. Now, the reason it's so cold, we've still got this very cold, deep blue Arctic air pushing down from the Arctic, covering much of the UK. Notice there's also this occlusion that will bring more showers to eastern areas. So there could be some ice on untreated roads across northeastern areas of England, as well as Northern Ireland and parts of northern and eastern Scotland, where there are warnings in force through Thursday morning. Away from that, relatively dry, some sunshine, warming up a little bit in the sunshine, but there will be a bit more of a breeze than recent days. So because of that, feeling quite chilly exposed to the breeze, closer to zero for many areas, even by the daytime. The snow showers will continue for much of Thursday across northern Scotland, but into the evening they will start to fade away and many areas will see quite a dry night on Thursday night. Clear spells allowing temperatures to plummet. It's likely to be the coldest night we've seen over the past week or so. Some freezing fog and murky weather will develop in the southeast, so many areas a severe frost as low as -15 on any snow surfaces overnight on Thursday night and Friday morning. Now, we'll see the next band of rain push into western Scotland. There's a snow and ice warning out for that for Friday morning. It'll fall as snow to lower levels at first, but become increasingly rain and sleet by Friday afternoon as things start to warm up ahead of the weekend. Though, having said that, across much of the UK, it will be a crisp and cold day through Friday. So it will warm up as we see wetter and windier weather approach from the west for the weekend, with temperatures coming up to the mid-teens for some of us by Sunday.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Dozens of migrants are fighting for their lives in hospital and 4 have died after a boat capsized in the English Channel.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Thursday the 15th of December. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel Webster and me, Andrew Pearce. Here's what's making the news this morning.
The Prime Minister has expressed his sorrow at the capsizing of a small boat in the Channel, telling MPs there'd been a tragic loss of human life. 4 people have died, many others remain in hospital after being rescued from the freezing water.
And breaking news here in Dover as authorities have now resumed an air and sea search for at least 4 migrants still believed to be missing after that boat partially deflated in the early hours of yesterday morning, on top, of course, of the 4 people who tragically lost their lives.
Nurses in England, Wales and Northern Ireland are staging walkouts this morning from 8 o'clock, actually, in the largest strike action in NHS history. The Health Minister, Maria Crawford, who is a nurse, told us the strikes will have a significant impact on the operation of the health service.
It is disappointing to see strike action today. It will mean around the cancellation around 70,000 operations, outpatients appointments and procedures, and that's not where we want to be.
And another royal bombshell, the second part of Harry and Meghan's explosive Netflix series has literally just dropped onto the streaming site. Our royal reporter Cameron Walker's live from the GB News Royal Reaction Room.
Yeah, I have Harry and Meghan's documentary on the big screen here. I'll be joined in a couple of minutes by a royal expert as we discuss the latest allegations against the royal family.
The Whinge Fest continues, and it's France versus Argentina. The two former champions are going to battle it out in the World Cup final in Qatar this weekend after France beat Morocco 2-0 in last night's semi-final.
And we want to hear from you this morning. Get in touch via Twitter or email. We are the People's Channel. It's gbviews@gbnews.uk. And don't forget to let us know where you're listening or watching from. So leading the news this morning, 4 people have died after a migrant boat capsized in the English Channel yesterday. It is the worst tragedy in the Strait for over a year.
The dinghy carrying the migrants is believed to have suffered a puncture halfway across the channel, around 12 miles from Dungeness.
39 people were pulled from the water, but 4 more are missing, according to survivors.
And this tragedy comes, of course, as more than 44,000 people have made that crossing across the channel this year already. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, has more.
Just 13 months after 27 migrants drowned in the English Channel, another tragedy unfolding offshore. The sound of helicopters filling the night sky as Coast Guard and air ambulance assets scrambled to the scene. There were dozens of people in the water after their small migrant boat got into difficulties. Lifeboats, Border Force and Royal Navy vessels, along with their French counterparts, converged on an area about 8 miles off the Kent coast. Back in Dover, ambulances were on standby in the harbour to receive the casualties. As the morning progressed, the worst possible news, with the confirmation of multiple fatalities. Their bodies brought back to shore as the Home Secretary addressed Parliament on another Channel tragedy authorities had long warned about.
These are the days that we dread. Crossing the Channel in unseaworthy vessels is a lethally dangerous endeavour. It is for this reason, above all, that we are working so hard to destroy the business model of the people smugglers, evil, organised criminals who treat human beings as cargo.
Even as the massive air and sea search operation continued, UK and French authorities had to respond to several other small boat sightings, picking up and transferring hundreds of migrants to Dover as the criminal gangs took full advantage of calmer weather conditions in the Channel.
The brutal truth as well is that criminal gangs have made money from those lives that were lost today. They have profited as people have drowned. Day after day, week after week, criminal gangs are putting lives at risk for money.
This latest tragedy came less than a day after the Prime Minister announced a new multi-pronged plan he hoped would help reduce the number of small boat crossings. Although the authorities in France and the UK have long warned about the dangers of trying to negotiate the English Channel in a flimsy small inflatable, there is no end to the number of people who seem to be willing to take that risk. And as far as the criminal gangs are concerned, well, they're not going to stop what is a lucrative multi-million-pound criminal enterprise. Even in these winter months, the Channel migrants will keep coming. Whenever the criminal gangs see a weather window, they'll launch en masse from French beaches. And sadly, individual tragedies will do nothing to deter them.
Well, we can go live to Mark White now, who joins us from Dover. And Mark, you were just saying at the top of the programme there that search and, recovery now resumes now that the sun has risen. The tragedy of all of this, and, you know, it's not very nice to talk about at breakfast time, but when you drown, you're nowhere near the surface of the water in the immediate aftermath, are you? It takes a few days before that can happen. So that search is going to go on for a long time, one presumes.
Well, potentially, yes. I mean, it just depends. If they're still wearing life jackets, then those individuals may still be on the surface of the sea. But, yeah, if somehow they've come out of their life jackets, they may well be at the bottom of the sea. And in the fullness of time, fishermen know that eventually bodies will rise again and be potentially washed ashore or picked up by other vessels. But yet, utterly tragic. They have been speaking to those on board that small boat that were rescued in the early hours of yesterday morning, and they're fairly confident that 47 people were on board the vessel. Now, they have accounted for 39 who were rescued, the 4 who then died as well, and they've calculated, of course, that leaves another 4 individuals out there that they are still looking for at this hour, and sadly there's just no way that they will have survived in those freezing temperatures in the channel more than a few hours really from the incident unfolding yesterday. It was really beyond hope that anybody would be pulled alive from the sea.
Those images in your film, most of them, if not all of the migrants who were being helped when they've landed in Dover, they were all young men.
Yes, well, we know, of course, Andrew, that the vast majority, up to about 90% of those who are crossing the English Channel to get to the UK are young men, so they are fitting that profile. Occasionally you get, of course, on these vessels women and children, and regardless of whether there are women and children on board, what you also get are calls made by the migrants to charities or to the emergency services in France or on this side of the channel to say they're in difficulties and that they need to be rescued, and they will say that there are women and children on board because they think that will ensure a speedier rescue. In truth, the authorities will always respond quickly if there is life in peril on the sea. That is just what they do, regardless of whether they are women, children or men.
Mark, we spoke earlier to Maria Caulfield, the government minister, and she suggested, well, she said quite clearly, she thinks the whole Rwanda deportation scheme could be up and running soon. I was surprised to hear that. You've got great sources in the Home Office. What's your understanding?
Well, it's not going to be up and running until the High Court comes back and rules, and we don't know what the judges in that ruling will decide in terms of whether the government policy of sending asylum seekers off to Rwanda for processing is lawful or not. Certainly, previous court hearings in the UK did suggest that it was lawful. Of course, then it was challenged right up to the European Court, who asked for that clarification, which is why we're in this process now of a judicial review to determine whether it's lawful or not. But you know the way of the courts in this country. Even if this judicial review comes away and says the government is lawful, it's possible at that stage that they just plough ahead with sending people to Rwanda. But we know that the human rights groups, the charities, will immediately launch an appeal against the judicial review decision if it goes against them. So it could be in the courts for long enough before there's a final decision on whether that Rwanda policy is wholly lawful at the end of the day. Does the government have the backbone to press ahead in the meantime? Well, they've certainly not done it so far, so let's wait and see.
All right, that's Mark White, our Home and Security Editor. I think if they don't have the backbone to do it, they're going to be in big political trouble.
Certainly Rishi Sunak seems to have staked his own premiership on it. Mark White, thank you very much indeed. I know you'll keep us posted on any developments on that story. Now, parts 4 to 6 of Harry and Meghan's documentary series has just dropped on Netflix in the last 11 minutes. The 4th episode of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's series opened with clips from the wedding of the late Queen and Duke of Edinburgh and the now King and Diana, Princess of Wales.
Meghan says her former private secretary, who she says worked for the Queen for some 20 years, said of the monarchy, it's like a fish that is swimming perfectly. It is powerful, it's on the right current, then one day this little organism comes in. It looks like it's another war on the House of Windsor.
Well, we can go live to the GB News Royal Reaction Room to speak to our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, who is watching these episodes for us, so you don't have to at home. I believe that all of those 3 new series have been dropped simultaneously, and I've just seen that apparently in the 5th episode, Harry is denying that Megxit, as it was described, was Meghan's idea. He said it was his idea to leave. Really interesting to see that they are coming out fighting once again, Cameron.
Really interesting point there, Isabel. Yes, of course, it was actually the narrative that perhaps it was Meghan's sole idea to leave the royal family as working members of the royal family and move to California. In fact, there have been rumours for some time now that Harry was very much involved in that, and now, as you just said, it does sound like Prince Harry is giving that on the record as fact. I'm afraid we're not quite that far ahead in episode 5 so far. We've just started watching episode 4, and when I say we, I mean that I'm joined by royal historian Rafe Hadel-Manku, who has joined me here in the Royal Reaction Room for all the latest. Rafe, welcome, first of all. The trailer, let's talk about that came out with that allegation from Meghan's lawyer that there were people within Buckingham Palace briefing negative stories about them to the press in order to perhaps make other members of the royal family look good. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, all I can say is it seems as if, they were holding their punches in the first 3 episodes. There would have been a sigh of relief at Buckingham Palace after those first 3 episodes proving rather a damp squib. But the trailers do seem to suggest that there are explosive allegations to be made here. But this is their time to actually show us the money, so to speak. They have to actually provide evidence. So far, we've had a lot of hot air, but very little substance. We've had people with no credibility, friends of Meghan's like Lucy Fraser, who no one has ever heard of, being quoted as if they are authorities. They're not authorities. This is the time to put up or shut up, because the British public aren't fools, and they can see that this is much more propaganda than documentary. And all that we've seen so far are a lot of allegations that haven't had much substance to this.
In the first few minutes of episode 4, Meghan is describing her experience of the royal wedding at Windsor, and she makes a very interesting point that she claims she didn't realise there would be crowds on either side of the road greeting her, waving at her as she was driving towards St George's Chapel. Many perhaps would see that as hard to believe.
It's quite a remarkable statement to think that she wasn't aware of what happened at the wedding of Diana, for example, or indeed of her sister-in-law. We know full well that she was au fait with Prince Harry's background, and it's very hard to believe that somebody in America wouldn't be aware of what exactly is going to be going on with the royal family. I mean, throughout this whole thing, this does seem to be an orchestrated attempt to advance a certain sort of narrative. You know, we've seen in the last episodes trying to portray not only the royal family or the media, but also the British nation as institutionally racist. But we saw from those crowds at Windsor that the British public aren't racist. They were fully in support of this. This idea that, you know, Harry and Meghan are some sort of social justice warriors trying to struggle against the oppression in the royal family and the British media is nonsense. She's much less of a Rosa Parks figure, more like a Jussie Smollett.
Rafe, for the moment, thank you very much. Of course, Harry and Meghan believe their side of the story is genuinely what happens. Of course, there are 2 sides to every story. We're going to continue watching, Isabel and Andrew, and as soon as we have any more bombshells for you, we'll bring it straight to you.
Indeed, I'm pleased to say that we can actually play everybody at home a little clip. Let's have a listen in.
So I knew that when I got to the actual castle, how funny is that to say, when we got to the castle for my wedding, that there'd be tons of people. What I didn't know is people would be lining both sides of the street. I mean, this was a 15-minute drive. I think my mom and her both like, what is going on? Look at all these people.
Everyone's got their phones out. There we go. Oh. Well, look at that.
There was an expectation, right? Diana's boy. There was an expectation to have a public wedding. It was like, mission complete with William. Now, let's see if this goes the distance with Harry, and then we can literally go, job done.
Controversial about that. Every parent wants to launch their children in a happy and successful marriage, don't they? Interesting, some other lines are dropping on the wires this morning. Meghan apparently has been talking about then the bubble burst, saying news presenters were heard saying Duchess difficult and calling her American. It said it was already clear to the media the palace were not going to protect her, and once that happens, then the floodgates open.
And she didn't realise there'd be lots of people lining the streets, the wedding that cost £30 million to the British taxpayer. Did she not watch any of the other royal weddings? I don't believe her.
Them.
She studied every bit of them. We're joined in the studio by showbiz reporter from the Daily Mail, Stephanie Tecci. What do you make of that?
Well, to be honest, I'm not surprised by this because we forget Meghan was an actress. She wants to be in front of the camera.
She's a rather good actress.
She wants to play up. She wants to be about the drama. So this is not surprising to me. And I think, you know, what's evident with this docuseries is she's American and he's British. That attitude is quite different. Americans are quite optimistic. They're a bit in la-la land, and that's what Meghan comes across in this documentary. Obviously, she wants to get her story across, but I think at the same time, she has been quite naive, and whether that's believable to audiences, it's, you know, a personal decision.
I think it's affected naivety, because I can't believe anyone who's marrying into the royal family wouldn't know about some of the stuff that's going to be happening. Now, look, I was there at Windsor, covering that wedding. I felt the warmth, the output. There was huge warmth. People were cheering as she went past. People were craning their neck to catch a glimpse of this bride.
Well, Andrew, what's happened, I think, with the first 3 episodes, we've seen kind of like this fairy tale of how they've fallen in love, and it was almost like this Hollywood romantic film. But I feel like for the next 3 episodes, we're going to see how it's turned into a horror show, because the public did take Meghan on as one of their own, you know, before the wedding. But after the wedding, the tone changed. There was the fallout with her father. There was the personal issues that was happening between Kate and Meghan that was being exposed in the newspapers. So that all affected public opinion. You go onto some sites and there's up to 25,000 articles written about Harry and Meghan, and a majority of them are quite negative. And this has helped shape how the public view Meghan and Harry.
But if she fell out...
Lines. Few more lines that are coming out of this, and then you can react to them. Apparently, she, in the 4th episode of this, has been talking about her relationship with now King Charles, talking about when he walked her down the aisle. Apparently she said, Harry's dad is very charming, and I said to him, like, I've lost my dad in this, so him as my father-in-law was really important to me, so I asked him to walk me down the aisle, and he said yes. Meghan later added, H and I are really, really good at finding each other in the chaos. When we find each other, we reconnect. It's like you, it's you. It's not that the rest of it doesn't matter, but the rest feels temporary. I mean, she's talking, as you say, a bit of la-la land there to me. And there was one other line I wanted to read to you that she has been quoted as saying this morning, where she's been talking about the choir, the gospel choir that performed at their wedding. And Serena Williams is being quoted in one of the episodes this morning as saying, to have her culture represented at that wedding, amazing, I loved it. I thought it was really courageous, breaking boundaries, but not trying to. And that in itself goes to show how far the royal family were prepared to go to welcome her in.
And the priest who did the sermon, which went on for 15 minutes, we know, and we know, of course, a bit of laughter, because we know the Queen doesn't want any sermon to go on longer than 7 minutes.
Quite right.
Quite right.
Yeah. But it's turned to a disaster. That's the thing, you know. I think we all had such optimism for this relationship, and obviously it's still going strong. But the relationship between them and the UK public, and indeed the monarchy, has been destroyed.
Right, we've got a clip of the wedding dance. Let's take a look at that, Stephanie.
I just really wanted the music to be fun. Even our first dance, Song of a Thousand Dances, 1,000. I always get it wrong.
1, 2, 3. All right.
Mashed potato.
There you go.
That was our first dance. It was so fun. It was just spinning like a whirlwind. It was so great.
I like like all that stuff.
same
Just
here.
show us this stuff. You don't need to lob bombs at the royal family. Show us the love story.
I don't think they are dropping bombs at the royal family. I think they're dropping bombs at the institution that surrounds the royal family and the media. Because when you watch these, you know, the headlines that come out of all these docuseries, it seems like they're attacking the royal family, and that's not the case. When you watch it intently, actually, no, they're
Hang on,
talking
Stephanie,
about...
she's saying that Buckingham Palace leaked stories about her to distract from flattering stories about other members of the royal. That is an attack on the royal family.
How formal they were behind closed doors and how she wasn't prepared for that coldness.
Well, that's her honest opinion of what she experienced. She can't lie about that. She can't cover it up. And, you know, being someone who's worked in the gossip industry for many years, I always tend to know it's an inside job, because most of these stories that get into the newspapers, how is it going to get there without someone from inside telling the media about what's going on? When Meghan was falling out with her staff, how would have any of us known about that if it wasn't coming from an insider?
However, if Buckingham Palace really is leaking stuff to damage her, why haven't they published a report, a major report, into serious bullying allegations against the Duchess of Sussex and 5 or even 6 members of her staff? That report has never been published, and I suspect if it was, it would be very damaging for her.
Or it could be damaging for the royal household. It works both ways.
Yeah.
OK, listen, we will keep watching that docu-series and bringing you all the latest lines from it. Stephanie Tetchy, thank you very much.
Now, nurses across England, Wales and Northern Ireland have gone on strike this morning. It's the first strike ever involving the Royal College of Nursing after talks with the government ended in complete and total deadlock.
Well, thousands of patients are expecting to face disruption to operations and appointments, though nurses are going to continue to provide emergency care with the support of hundreds of army personnel in place of striking ambulance drivers.
The Royal College of Nursing is asking for a larger pay rise of 5% above the current 14% inflation rate. We're going to speak now to intensive care unit nurse Kelly Hopkins, who's outside Aintree Hospital right now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Did you ever think you would be on a picket line?
I certainly did not know. I've been nursing over 27 years and I never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be stood here today.
Can I ask you, how difficult is it for you to manage financially on the pay you're currently being given?
It's very hard indeed. I know colleagues of mine that are having to use food banks on a daily basis. They can't put their heating on. They're coming to work hungry. They're going without food to feed their children. You know, we're in a caring profession, but no one's caring about us. They're coming into work into difficult conditions where staffing levels are so low, and it's not just about pay. We're here today about patient safety. There's not enough nurses on the ward, and how do we attract new nurses in when the pay isn't good? There's newly qualified nurses who are £65,000 worth in debt, and they're only earning £24,000 to £27,000 a year.
Yeah, look, I'm glad you mentioned patient safety, because whilst there may be a lot more public support for nurses striking than perhaps, say, train drivers, there are also lots of families, or indeed patients themselves, who feel as though they are being held hostage in a pay dispute. However justifiable that dispute might be, we don't want to see people losing their lives over this, surely.
Well, we're not. Our main concern is patient safety. A&E is still open. Critical care is still open. We're doing this for our patients. Patients aren't safe. Patients aren't getting the care. Your mum, your granddad, your daughter, your sister, your baby deserves to come into hospital and be looked after safely. At the moment, there's 2 nurses on a ward that cannot deliver that care. We're going into hospital. I came into nursing to look after my patients, to hold their hands, to look after them, to wash them, to brush their teeth when they're unable to do that, and I can't do that at the moment because there's not enough staff on the ward. And if you're happy for your patient, your relative to come in and not have that care and be left, then what else are we to do? It doesn't sit right with me being here on this picket line today, but I'm doing it because it doesn't sit right when I'm walking home after a shift, knowing that I haven't delivered the care that I should be delivering to my patients.
The four chief nurses for England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have written a letter to the Royal College of Nursing warning that the industrial action you're taking today will inevitably, almost inevitably, lead to loss of life. How comfortable are you with that?
I don't believe that, because we've derogated areas where there is the threat to life. So those areas are staffed. I believe that we're here today to make a difference, to make the government stand up and listen. I'd like to see the Prime Minister's relative come in and not be able to be assisted to go to the toilet, or be left if they've been incontinent and there's no nurse there to help clean them up. Is that what you want? I don't know, but that doesn't sit right with me, and that's why I'm here today, for my patients, to make sure there's enough of us to look after them. There's 60,000 nurse vacancies at the moment that are unfilled. Who, as a young person leaving school, wants to come into a profession where you're not getting off on time, you can't deliver the care that you want to give, and you're not getting paid decent amount of money? They're wasting billions of pounds on agency nurses every year. Pay us, we'll come in extra shifts. Pay the nurses to come into the profession so that those 60,000 vacancies are filled. Then we wouldn't be stood here today, would we?
Okay, well, look, it's the first of many strikes being promised by the RCN, which are going to go on longer in the new year. Lots of patients, as Andrew is saying, likely to suffer as a consequence of all of this. But Stephanie Dunn, you put your case very passionately. Thanks for joining us this morning. Regional Director for the RCN North West stood outside Aintree University Hospital in Liverpool this morning. Right, stay with us. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in a minute.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, and then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Well, welcome back. The time is now 8:31 and Aston Villa's Tyrone Mings and John McGinn have paid tribute to the 3 boys who died after being pulled from an ice-covered lake in Solihull at the weekend.
Well, the footballers visited the memorial saying they felt their pain. This, of course, before the tragic announcement yesterday afternoon. The 4th boy, a 6-year-old who was fighting for his life in hospital, also sadly lost his life. Well, our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson joins us from Solihull this morning, and it was the news all of us were praying we wouldn't get yesterday afternoon, Jack.
Exactly right. It's the news that this community has been dreading, the loss of that 6-year-old boy, the 4th and final child to have passed away in that incident. This community has come together so well and so suddenly in the wake of this terrible incident, and it's going to have to do exactly that this morning. But rest assured, after being here this week, I can tell you that is exactly what they will do. On Tuesday, a Kingshurst resident said to me that when things are at their worst, Kingshurst is at its best, and that's exactly what we've seen. You can see the flowers behind me. So many more have been added this morning already. Candles again being lit here at the memorial tree. We still haven't had really an official description of the events that took place here on Sunday. We've had witness reports that suggest that one of the 4 was playing on the ice, their foot fell through, they got stuck and their friends tried to run on and help them. We heard, of course, of 10-year-old Jack Johnson, who was one of the 4 to have passed away, who ran onto the ice without any hesitation and just tried to rescue his friend. It took minutes for police to get here, and the police officer tried punching through the ice, ran in his normal clothes, suffered mild hypothermia as a result, even when fire service got here. But they didn't wait for the specialist water operations team to get here. They just ran straight in to try and save the 4 boys. All 4 were in cardiac arrest when they were handed over to the paramedics team and were given CPR here on site before they were taken to critical care. Of course, we learnt on Monday of the deaths of that 8, 10 and 11-year-old, and yesterday afternoon the final death of that 6-year-old boy. Now, police had been searching the lake since Monday because they'd got differing witness reports that suggested there may have been up to 6 children involved in this incident. Now that that 4th boy has confirmed to be passed away, the police presence here is no more. That operation has been completed, and the lake and this nature reserve is back open for members of the public today. And I'm sure this community, a lot of this community, will head down towards the lake to pay their own personal respects. As the week has gone on, the tributes here have flooded in here around this memorial tree, this place now of reflection here. But throughout the week, as we hadn't learnt of the current condition of that 6-year-old boy in hospital, we kind of had started to have messages of support, messages like, you can do this and keep fighting. But of course, the devastating news yesterday was that that fight just couldn't be won. So this morning, this community will stand hand in hand to remember, but also to support the families that so many of them here know, because these people and this family and this community have lost some loved ones far too soon.
Absolutely horrendous story. Jack Carson, thank you very much indeed.
Now stay with us because we'll be going through the papers with Freddie Gray and Emma Burnell after this.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, it's now 8:39 and we're going to bring you up to date with today's front pages.
The Times is focusing on the 4 dead in the Channel after the migrant dinghy sinked yesterday morning. They're also commemorating King Charles and his first 100 days as king.
The Sun goes with the £5,000 ticket to death as those 4 migrants died in the freezing Channel.
The Telegraph says the damage the nurses' strikes will do will get worse as they look ahead to even more walkouts in January.
And The Guardian has a scathing report about police victim blaming in rape cases with persistent failings, they say, in the criminal justice system.
And the Metro focusing on Zara Alina's killer, who was given 38 years minimum in jail yesterday for her murder. Their top line there, she was just on her way home.
And in The Star, tough luck, kid. Your presents have been eaten by the foxes as animals have been feasting on undelivered Christmas gifts at post office depots as a consequence of that strike, of course.
It's time to look through the papers one last time this morning with the Deputy Editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray, and the journalist and playwright Emma Burnell. Very warm welcome back to both of you. Emma, shall we start with Dominic Raab making headlines for all the wrong reasons, these bullying allegations that will not go away? 5 more came to light yesterday. What have the Mirror got to say about all of this?
Basically, as you say, 5 more people, and they're just piling up these accusations against him for bullying. And the problem is, of course, Sunak has left it far too long to do anything about it. So, you know, what is the number that Raab has to reach, that the complaints have to reach where he acts? And if he acts now, he looks weak. Having not acted, he looks weak. So there just seems to be a real problem with discipline at the top. And this is not unique to Sunak. There was a similar thing where Priti Patel was found guilty of bullying. You know, they went through the whole process, and at the end, everyone went, yeah, but we're not going to do anything about it.
But we don't know if these bullying allegations
we don't know yet that these are
justified.
No, but in most workplaces, if this had happened, you would be put on some form of suspension because, yeah, while they're investigated on full pay, which is only fair because you are innocent until proven guilty, but you would be taken out of the situation so that those who were making the accusations wouldn't feel pressured in the workplace.
Freddie, do you think he should be suspended?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think there's obviously a campaign to get him out. That's obvious. Whenever you read about bullying allegations against politicians, it's usually because somebody wants them out. And civil servants don't like Dominic Raab. I think he is quite a cantankerous character.
He's an intellectual snob too. I know that's because he's a very clever man and he's exacting standards. But that's no bad thing, is it?
He's also is it boxing or kickboxing blue?
Karate.
So therefore,
I think it's karate.
Not only an intellectual snob, but he's ruthless in.
He's a thug and an intellectual snob.
There you go.
Great combo.
And works in Westminster, so triple whammy.
Don't get into a physical punch-up, you're going to lose.
Yeah, I haven't, and I won't. But I think over the pandemic he clashed a lot with his civil servants because there was the big fuss about them coming back to work or not. Jacob Rees-Mogg got involved, but I think at the Ministry of Justice that got very, very nasty. So I suspect a lot of it's to do with that.
Right. Yeah. And now, what other stories are you focusing on here?
Let's talk about Boris.
Obviously, I just want to talk about Harry and Meghan.
Yeah. How much is he making?
He's made $1 million since leaving office.
Oh, well, that might pay for some new wallpaper for Carrie.
750,000 for 2. Quite. He has expensive families.
Expensive spouse.
Yeah.
I think it was her choice of wallpaper. I don't think Boris is interested
Lulu
in
Little.
detail like
I don't think Boris was looking around Lulu Little catalogues.
Yeah. I mean, given he can't brush his hair, he probably doesn't choose his own wallpaper.
No, and we know that the wallpaper was peeling as well.
Could I point out that he's made all this money since leaving office? The guy's still an MP. He has constituents that need representing.
Lots of MPs have 2 jobs.
They do.
Well,
they
do. Should they, is the question.
But he is actually...
Nursing is one thing because she's maintaining a professional qualification, but running around talking about stuff we know he knows nothing about, like Boris is the big expert on Bitcoin.
He's actually spending a lot more time in his constituency at the moment.
He is.
Because he might lose it.
Yes, he is. And we've actually seen him. He was at the local football club and he's raised the name of the constituency in the Commons for everything going about the 5th time in 10 years.
Yeah. Well, they must feel so obliged.
Yes.
If he's making a bit more money, perhaps that means he can afford to stay in politics a bit longer because we know that, you know, he probably would like another run at being Prime Minister, but he's not making the kind of cash that will sustain the lifestyle to which
he'll never be as rich as Rishi Sunak.
No.
Well, this is true.
Or Mrs. Sunak.
None of us will.
And maybe that, you know, we see that in America a little bit. Maybe politics will just be pursued by people who have the money to do it. Because
I don't have a problem with rich people being in politics. I think the way Labour keep nudge, nudge, wink, wink, Rishi Sunak, non-dom, rich, all that. I think we want talented people to come into politics.
I don't have a problem with rich people being in politics as long as they pay their taxes.
Well, I agree.
Well, let's just be clear. Non-doms do pay taxes on the earnings that they make in the country.
But they shovel a load of it off to the Bahamas or whatever.
The non-dom thing really winds.
Labour keep banging on about the non-dom thing. Ed Balls, former Labour Treasury Minister, who was Gordon Brown's right-hand man, explained why our Labour government never brought in this tax on non-doms because he said it would cost the Exchequer money because the non-doms would go elsewhere.
May explain why he's now dancing for a living.
What happened to Francois Hollande when he decided to go after non-doms and they all came over to London and we got to capitalise on that. But anyway, we digress from Boris. Do you think he's going to make enough to be able to sustain his political ambitions?
I'm betting on a Boris comeback at some stage, yeah.
If he doesn't lose his seat?
I think Tories get trounced at the next election, 10 years in the wilderness, the country in ever more trouble. Boris will emerge again as a potential saviour.
He'd be quite old by then, 10 years' time. He's in his late 50s now.
Yes, although I actually don't think... I mean, I don't think he... Most people age a lot in office. I don't think he aged that much.
It's because he didn't do any work.
He didn't try.
I think he's a bulldog, isn't he? He's tough. He's tough.
I know, I'm so mean, Andrew.
Yeah, you are.
I'm also right.
Yeah. Well, the people say he had no attention to detail, but I don't think he was lazy.
He's written rather a strange... Can I do a plug for the Spectator? He's written rather a strange Christmas diary in our Christmas edition, which I recommend.
What's strange about it?
He talks about how he wants to recite classics and be paid for it. It reads a bit like he might be sort of on drugs.
Is he? And of course, he's got his Shakespeare book to write.
Yes, that's still not done.
Ages
when
ago.
Liz Truss came to office, the thing I missed the most about Boris Johnson was his references to Greek gods and whatever else it might be in his speeches. He was very erudite. It was quite entertaining.
I prefer that to Michael Bublé,
Talking of, what is this story about Michael Bublé?
Well, Rishi Sunak's on a PR drive, a Christmas PR push.
That's not like him.
He's doing a lot of interviews.
Doesn't your heart sink?
Hindu faith, hasn't he? He talked about his interview and that he prays with his family, which is interesting. And you know,
he prays with his family.
With his family, with his children, and he talks about how important the Hindu faith is to him, which is great, and also how he can be a Hindu and still celebrate Christmas, which is also very great.
He goes to temple, doesn't he?
But he let it all down by revealing that he loves Michael Bublé.
It just feels like the most focused group answer you could give at this time of year. Like, who's the Christmas guy? Oh, it's Mickey Bubble. That'll do. Like, give that answer. It's like when Gordon Brown referenced the Arctic Monkeys to try and sound edgy.
You know he'd never heard of it.
Like, Rishi Sunak is trying to sound bland.
But
I mean, it works because he is bland.
No, he's not. He's actually...
I think he probably does, because he's genuinely cheesy, I think.
Yeah, he's really cheesy.
But it is interesting how politicians change like that, because you're right, Gordon Brown used to try and sound cool, you know, pathetically.
There was the whole Cool Britannia thing with Oasis going to number 10.
David Cameron used
tried to support a football team, didn't he? That was hilarious.
Yeah, he's got the wrong one.
Got
the wrong one.
Mixed up the colours.
But Michael Bublé, there's a bit of a thing with Michael Bublé in the Tory party. I went to Lord Ashcroft's 70th birthday party, former Tory Deputy Treasurer, and with 750 of his closest friends at a rather large hotel in London, and Michael Bublé performed, and he was rather good.
I mean, to be fair, if I was going to name an artist that reminded me most of the worst aspects of the boring Tories, it would be Michael Bublé.
Guys, I'm going to have to defend Michael Bublé. If I put Michael Bublé on, I instantly feel Christmassy.
Yeah.
He's young, handsome, and makes the old classics come to life.
Well, not young or handsome, but for Christmas, got to be slayed. Every day of the week.
That's a cliche if I've ever heard one.
And he shouts the opening line of that song at his wife. She must love that.
Amazing. Who doesn't love that?
Yeah. What's your least favourite Christmas pop song?
Oh, Mistletoe and Wine.
Is that Cliff Richard?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And
I mean,
Cliff Richard.
Who's just gone to number 2 in the album charts.
I mean, fair play. Those who still buy albums are probably in Cliff Richard's demographic.
Well, is Michael Bublé top of your hit list? Or
no,
list, or...
East 17, that one.
Oh, Stay Now.
Stay Now. Well,
there's something satanic
East
about
London
it.
girl, I can fully
I like
endorse
the Wizard
that.
one. What's the Wizard one of Christmas?
I
wish it could be Christmas every day.
Yeah, I like
that's
that
great.
one. Driving Home for Christmas is very evocative, isn't
Yes,
it? Makes
it is.
If you want a bit of a left field one, Frankie Goes to Hollywood. The Power of Love, which is technically a Christmas song because it had the video is the Nativity Story.
OK. Right.
Although it does start talking about vampires, so it's slightly odd.
Yeah, that's odd. Cliff Richard was at this charity dinner I was at the other night, and everybody was going up.
Let's just get a...
No, honestly, everybody was going up and wishing him luck because they want him to be number 1 rather than who's the rapper?
Lad Baby.
Lad Baby, yeah.
For the 5th year in a row.
They keep releasing Christmas songs for charity.
Yeah, they've
Never heard of
won
them.
the last few years, but I couldn't pick them out.
They're the new X Factor winner.
Is that the I Love Bacon Roll or whatever it was?
Sounds like it.
Instead of I Love Rock and Roll.
Well, I think I might buy Cliff Richard's album to help him along. but what would I play it on? You don't buy an album, do you?
I think you can buy albums. I don't know. Everything for me is just liking. I like that song, add it to a playlist.
and for Christmas, we're going to get you, Freddie, a razor and some shaving cream.
Oh.
Yes, I'd like to make my excuses.
Maybe a new suit.
One, we had our office Christmas lunch. I know you got your...
went very well.
Christmas lunch went very well. 2 sick children.
Oh, OK.
So I'm covered in excuses. Right. I've got to go home and look after them.
Oh, no, not strep A, I hope.
All 3 of them, yeah. Stay away from me.
Oh, God.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Have they actually?
No, not strep A, sorry, but they're very sick. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, poor baby.
Gosh, well... I don't know what to say on that. I hope the children get well soon.
They'll be fine, they'll be fine.
Yes. OK, right. How long have we got, left on the programme? 4 minutes, right, so that means we need to wrap the papers, I believe. Sorry, I wasn't sure what we're doing there. Emma Burnell, Freddie Gray, always a pleasure, never a
Great
chore.
pleasure. Yeah.
Godspeed to you. Let's go to one of our other regular paper reviewers, Christopher Biggins, but joining us in a very different capacity this morning, joining us from Darlington, where he's getting involved once again in pantomime. I can't believe it, 46 years you've been doing pantomime for. Morning, Biggins!
Good morning to you gorgeous people.
Is that a reference to me or to you? I think it's a reference to you.
plural,
No, I think he means you. I don't think he
I
means
love both of you, so, you know, it's lovely to see. And I've got Michael Bublé here, who'd like to say a few words.
Do you like Bublé, Biggins? Please tell me.
Oh, I love him. I think he's fantastic. And I love Cliff,
someone with
too.
taste.
Come on, Cliff. We've got to get him to #1.
You're quite right, Christopher. I quite agree. I'm going to go and buy that app, download, whatever it is, to get him to #1.
Sound like you're all over this.
All over it. Now, you're playing Mrs. Smee in Peter Pan, Christopher. You've been playing pantomime for 46 years. The first one was 1976 in Mother Goose.
1976. It's taken them 46 years to ask me back.
Is that because you weren't very good last time?
No, I was terrible. But it's been wonderful. I mean, I love Darlington. Darlington is absolutely gorgeous, and we're having a wonderful time up here. We've done about... oh, look, there I am.
You look gorgeous.
Don't I look wonderful? Marvellous. And the audiences here are fantastic. There is definitely a difference between the north and the south. And I'm going to probably get shot now. But the northern audiences are absolutely fantastic. Oh, that's the finale. I make my finale entrance. I fly in as a chandelier.
Oh.
You fly in?
I fly in. If you look carefully, that's a chandelier I'm wearing there. And it's just what I love flying. It's absolutely marvellous, invigorating.
Why do you think, Biggins, that the north is you get a better audience in the north than the south?
I think they want to enjoy themselves. I mean, I tell you, when I first was asked to come to Darlington, you know, in the summer, I was a little worried about everything, you know, the financial situation, whether people should eat or whether they should heat, you know, all those sort of problems. And I thought, my goodness, we're going to have a really difficult one. We are so fantastically busy. If I say sold out, I mean sold out. It is wonderful. It is so exciting. And I think people want to come out and really have a good laugh. And we're giving them that, which is fantastic. I mean, you know, there are moments in the pantomime, lots of moments where people absolutely scream with laughter. And I think that's the joy of it all.
You've been doing it for 46 years, Chris. So what's your favourite panto?
Well, without doubt, when I started my pantomime career in Darlington 46 years ago, I did Mother Goose. And Mother Goose is the best because it's all about her, the story. And it's about a woman who is greedy. She wants to become beautiful. She wants to have money. And it's a wonderful story. Interestingly enough, now we've got Sir Ian McKellen doing it at the moment. It's a great pantomime for everything, but very rarely done. I don't know quite why, but it doesn't appeal to the producers of pantomimes, but it's a fantastic pantomime. I love it.
Do you get to keep your costumes? I'm just imagining the chandelier making an appearance on the pay-per-view at some point in the not-too-distant future.
Well, when I come back in January and I come back and do the papers, I'll be wearing it. Don't worry.
Oh, good. Do you promise? I'll hold you to that.
Yeah, and
I don't know if I can promise you that, no, but it is a wonderful costume, I have to say. No, I tell you, when I first started doing pantomime, I used to keep them in the loft. And then there became so many, and they're so big. I mean, I have 4 people put me in the chandelier. I mean, you know, it's quite something. And it takes up a lot of room. In fact, I don't think I'd fit on your set, actually.
Oh, Biggins. Well, listen, it sounds like you're fully sold out. I was going to do a bit of a plug for the show on every day, 2:30 and 7 o'clock at the Darlington Hippodrome, but people can't get tickets even if they want to.
Oh, they can. There are. We'll fit them in somehow.
Oh, good. All right. Well, Biggins, we wish you well. Merry Christmas. Always lovely to see you.
Merry Christmas to you too, and to all your viewers, and big, big hugs, and Happy New Year. And let's hope it's a wonderful New Year.
Hear, hear.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
And I love your Christmas jumper, Christopher.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think it's on backwards. I think it lights up at the back, but I'm not sure. It's a bit of a rush to put it on this morning.
Oh, well, we thank you for it, Big, and see you soon. All the best.
Yeah, lots of love.
Bye. Stay with us. We're going to have more, of course, because in the last hour, part 2 of Meghan and Harry's docu-series dropped. We'll have full analysis after this.
Good morning and welcome to your latest weather update with me, Annie Shuttleworth, from the Met Office. It's going to be another cold day out there today, though many areas will see some sunshine. Now, the reason it's so cold, we've still got this very cold, deep blue Arctic air pushing down from the Arctic, covering much of the UK. Notice there's also this occlusion that will bring more showers to eastern areas. So there could be some ice on untreated roads across northeastern areas of England, as well as Northern Ireland and parts of northern and eastern Scotland, where there are warnings in force through Thursday morning. Away from that, relatively dry, some sunshine, warming up a little bit in the sunshine, but there will be a bit more of a breeze than recent days. So because of that, feeling quite chilly exposed to the breeze, closer to 0 for many areas, even by the daytime. The snow showers will continue for much of Thursday across northern Scotland, but into the evening they will start to fade away and many areas will see quite a dry night on Thursday night. Clear spells allowing temperatures to plummet. It's likely to be the coldest night we've seen over the past week or so. Some freezing fog and murky weather will develop in the southeast, so many areas a severe frost as low as -15 on any snow surfaces overnight on Thursday night and Friday morning. Now, we'll see the next band of rain push into western Scotland. There's a snow and ice warning out for that for Friday morning. It'll fall as snow to lower levels at first, but become increasingly rain and sleet by Friday afternoon as things start to warm up ahead of the weekend. Though, having said that, across much of the UK, it will be a crisp and cold day through Friday. So it will warm up as we see wetter and windier weather approach from the west for the weekend, with temperatures coming up to the mid-teens for some of us by Sunday.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Dozens of migrants are fighting for their lives in hospital, and 4 have died after that boat capsized in the English Channel.
Good morning, it's 9:01. It's Thursday, the 15th of December. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel, Webster and Andrew Pearce. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Well, the Prime Minister's expressed his sorrow at the capsizing of that small boat in the Channel, telling MPs there'd been a tragic loss of human life. 4 people died and many others remain in hospital after being rescued from the freezing water.
And as sun rises over a bitterly cold English Channel this morning, an air and sea search for up to 4 migrants still believed to be missing in the Channel has now resumed, on top, of course, of the 4 who tragically lost their lives in the early hours of yesterday morning.
Nurses in England, Wales and Northern Ireland are staging walkouts this morning in the largest strike action in NHS history. Nurse and Health Minister Maria Caulfield told us the strikes will have a significant impact on the health service.
It is disappointing to see strike action today. It will mean around the cancellation around 70,000 operations, outpatients appointments and procedures, and that's not where we want to be.
And another royal bombshell. Yes, they're at it again. The second part of Harry and Meghan's explosive Netflix series has dropped in the last hour.
The issue is when someone who's marrying in, who should be a supporting act, is then stealing the limelight or is doing the job better than the person who was born to do this. That upsets people. It shifts the balance.
And our royal reporter Cameron Walker is live from our royal reaction room. Cameron.
Yeah, I'm joined by a panel of experts as we discuss the latest claim in Harry and Meghan's documentary series, including a claim by Prince Harry that he was heartbroken when his brother Prince William allegedly broke a promise they made to each other.
And it's France versus Argentina. The 2 former champions are going to battle it out in the World Cup final in Qatar this weekend. France beat Morocco 2-0 last night. I don't think I'm going to watch it.
And get in touch. Got half an hour left of the programme. You can tweet us, you can email us, gbnews@gbnews.uk. Don't forget to let us know where you're watching and listening from. So our top story this hour, 4 people have died after a migrant boat capsized in the English Channel yesterday. The worst tragedy in the Strait for over a year.
Well, the dinghy carrying the migrants suffered a puncture, we think, halfway across the channel around 12 miles from Dungeness.
39 people were pulled from the water, but 4 remain missing, according to survivors.
This tragedy comes as more than 44,000 people have made that crossing this year alone. Our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, has more.
Just 13 months after 27 migrants drowned in the English Channel, another tragedy unfolding offshore. The sound of helicopters filling the night sky as Coast Guard and air ambulance assets scrambled to the scene. There were dozens of people in the water after their small migrant boat got into difficulties. Lifeboats, Border Force and Royal Navy vessels, along with their French counterparts, converged on an area about 8 miles off the Kent coast. Back in Dover, Ambulances were on standby in the harbour to receive the casualties. As the morning progressed, the worst possible news, with the confirmation of multiple fatalities. Their bodies brought back to shore as the Home Secretary addressed Parliament on another Channel tragedy authorities had long warned about.
These are the days that we dread. Crossing the Channel in unseaworthy vessels is a lethally dangerous endeavour. It is for this reason, above all, that we are working so hard to destroy the business model of the people smugglers, evil, organised criminals who treat human beings as cargo.
Even as the massive air and sea search operation continued, UK and French authorities had to respond to several other small boat sightings, picking up and transferring hundreds of migrants to Dover as the criminal gangs took full advantage of calmer weather conditions in the Channel.
The brutal truth as well is that criminal gangs have made money from those lives that were lost today. They have profited as people have drowned. Day after day, week after week, criminal gangs are putting lives at risk for money.
This latest tragedy came less than a day after the Prime Minister announced a new multi-pronged plan he hoped would help reduce the number of small boat crossings. Although the authorities in France and the UK have long warned about the dangers of trying to negotiate the English Channel in a flimsy small inflatable, there is no end to the number of people who seem to be willing to take that risk. And as far as the criminal gangs are concerned, well, they're not going to stop what is a lucrative multi-million-pound criminal enterprise. Even in these winter months, the Channel migrants will keep coming. Whenever the criminal gangs see a weather window, they'll launch en masse from French beaches. And sadly, individual tragedies will do nothing to deter them.
Well, we can speak to Mark White now. Mark, they're resuming the search, but it's a bleak search, is it not?
Yes, sadly, there is no way that anyone could have survived in the freezing temperatures out in the English Channel for more than a few hours, really. From mid-morning onwards, it was really a search and recovery operation. They rescued 39 people in total. Of course, 4 people died. They've been speaking to those that they rescued throughout the day yesterday, and they're fairly sure that there was a total of 47 people on board this small boat. So that leaves 4 people who are still unaccounted for, and that's why that search operation has resumed this morning. And of course, we've been hearing a lot as well about the bravery of those on board. That scallop trawler that was out there just happened to be very close by at the time, or we could have been, we would certainly have been talking about many, many more casualties this morning. It was there within minutes. They heard the shouts and the screams from the people that were in the water. Some jumped into the water to reach that scallop boat as they saw it coming towards them. And the crew of the boat had to scramble to try to pull these people on board. They put them in warm showers on board. They gave them clothing and put them in bedding as they waited for the rescue services to arrive, just to try to heat them up a bit, clearly suffering the effects of the cold. And we know that a number of people were taken to hospital by a land ambulance and airlifted there because of the hypothermia that they suffered.
Thank you very much indeed, and I know that you'll keep us posted on any developments in that story. Really appreciate it.
Well, we're going to speak now to the Shadow Justice Secretary, Steve Reid, who joins us. Steve Reid, good morning to you.
Good morning, good to be with you.
The tragedy and the Channel, what is Labour's solution to what's happening?
Well, I mean, first of all, can I express my sympathy for the loss of life, known and unknown? you couldn't imagine something worse happening to people, and it illustrates to all of us why this problem has to be tackled. Now, Labour, I've been coming around these studios and to some of my colleagues for quite some time now, saying that the government needs to get a grip of this crisis in a way that so far they haven't. Now, first thing that we should be doing is we've been calling for a specialist unit to be set up within the National Crime Agency to work much more closely with our partners in France and Belgium across the Channel, but Europol right across the continent, to tackle at source these evil people smugglers who profiteer from human misery. And it is they who are bringing these people to Calais and then putting them on the boats. It's no accident that the dinghies we see are all exactly the same. That's because there's a number of people trafficking gangs, smuggling gangs, that are orchestrating all of this to make money for themselves, regardless of the cost or consequences in human life. So absolutely, that has to happen as a matter of urgency. But secondly, there's a pull factor going on here, which is the government is currently only processing 4% of all applications for asylum within a 12-month period. So 96% don't get processed. And when that many people are coming in and feel that they can just stay because the government isn't going to do anything, that gives the people smugglers a reason to say to people who might want to come here, well, look, we'll just get you there and the British government won't do anything, because indeed they have done absolutely nothing. They're processing so few people that, you know, hotels in my constituency, and I know in many other areas as well, are full of refugees at huge cost to the public purse.
Yes,
£6 million
and the Prime Minister, 7 weeks into the job, has specifically set out to tackle those problems and has staked his premiership on it. And he acknowledges there are huge problems, not least because of the massive increase in the numbers of people trying to make that treacherous journey.
But to be fair, they've been saying this for years, haven't they? And they haven't actually done anything. So three years ago, in the House of Commons, Priti Patel, who was then the Home Secretary, stood up and said she would halve the number of small boats coming across the Channel. Since then, it's gone up by 20-fold. It hasn't halved; it's gone up massively because they didn't work with our European partners in the way that they said that they would. Instead of working with them, we had Boris Johnson, who was then the Prime Minister, astonishingly comparing the Europeans to Nazis. And then Liz Truss, unable to say, when asked, if the French president was a friend or a foe to this country. Now, if you break our relationships, our partners that we need to work with in that way, then of course you're not going to get the cooperation that we need. And the reset can only come with a new government. So for all the talk, we've heard it all before, I'm afraid, and the government hasn't done any of it. Labour would set up this unit in the National Crime Agency. We will work positively with our European partners. Keir Starmer's already been over there to talk to them and try and re-establish functioning relationships instead of what we've seen. And it cannot be tolerable, can it, that only 4% of applications are processed within 12 months. Completely unacceptable, that. And even of those who have been processed and have been identified as safe for removal to a third country, 16,000 refugee applications have been found eligible for removal to a third country. Do you know how many of those 16,000 the government's actually removed? 21. That is a government that's just refusing to do their job, I'm afraid. And Labour would make sure that the applications happened faster, the processing happened faster, but those who failed it would be removed, because all of that failure is an incentive to the people traffickers to bring more people over.
Steve, read about the nurses' strike. It's the first strike in the history of the Royal College of Nursing. Do you support the nurses, and will you be joining them on the picket line?
Nobody wants these strikes to go ahead.
Do you support?
I don't.
Do you support them?
Nurses don't. Nobody, Andrew, nobody wants these strikes to go ahead. Absolutely nobody. And they didn't need to go ahead. The thing that Labour would do if we were in power today is Wes Streeting, who would be our health secretary, would sit down with both sides and talk about pay. Now, Steve Barclay ruled that out. Nurses said if he would simply sit down and talk, the strikes wouldn't happen. So the only reason these strikes are happening is because Rishi Sunak and Steve Barclay have refused to talk to the nurses about pay.
I mean, it's more than just sitting down. If you sit down and talk with the unions, you have to have a figure in mind of where you want to land. So where is Labour prepared to go in this? Nurses wanting 19%. Your own leader, Sir Keir Starmer, saying that we can't afford inflation-busting pay rises in this country. Lisa Nandy saying the same thing.
In your head, then you've predetermined the outcome. The whole point of a negotiation negotiation is you listen to what they've got to say and why they're making the claims that they are. The government would then put on the table its reasons why it perhaps can't meet that figure, and then a compromise is reached. But without the negotiation, you never get to that figure. So these strikes will keep recurring for as long as Steve Barclay and Rishi Sunak refuse to talk to the nurses about pay. The first thing Labour would do would get everyone around the table, the strikes would stop.
OK, we have to leave it there. Steve Reid, really good to talk to you. Shadow Justice Secretary, thanks very much indeed for your time. And we have to leave it there because, of course, just over an hour ago, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex dropped their 4th to 6th Whinge Fest, as you've been calling
it's
them
another
this morning,
Whinge Fest.
On Netflix. And Cameron Walker has been watching all of those. They've been discussing all sorts of topics from Mexit to the press coverage of Meghan, and indeed suicidal thoughts with Doria, her mother, breaking down in tears over all of that when Meghan revealed that she'd considered taking her own life. Let's take a little listen.
What she needed from me was so much more than I was able to give.
I wanted to go somewhere to get help, but I wasn't allowed to. They were concerned about how that would look for the institution.
They knew how bad it was. They thought, why couldn't she just deal with it? As if to say, well, you know, everybody else has dealt with it, why can't she deal with it? But this was different. It was really different. But actually, if you strip all that away and say, okay, fine, it was exactly the same. So do we still believe that she should have just sucked it up like other members of the family? Or does one think that maybe it's about time that we stop?
I just find it astonishing that she couldn't find anyone to talk to about mental health issues, bearing in mind her husband is the patron of several mental health charities. Wouldn't be difficult.
Yeah, let's get the take on all of this of our royal reporter Cameron Walker. He joins us from our royal reaction room this morning. Lots of allegations being made this morning, Cameron.
Yes, Isabel, pretty serious claims there.
Sorry,
Meghan, of
what were you
course,
guys saying
talking about her mental health and the fact she couldn't get help. It's something which she talked about last year during her interview with Oprah Winfrey. I'm joined with royal historian Rafe Hadel-Mancu. Rafe, just first of all, before we start talking about other things or other allegations which have happened in the first episode or so, Meghan's claim that she couldn't get access to mental health is a pretty serious claim, isn't it? What do you think that her thoughts were behind that?
It's a very serious claim, and it's one that I'm struggling to understand, because we know full well how much Harry has been involved in mental health issues, and one wonders what's stopping him from actually looking after his own wife. He's not a teenager, he's a full-fledged adult, and surely if his wife was in such desperate need, he could provide that. We also know very full well the Prince of Wales, very concerned about mental health, and indeed the current King also has been involved in mental health issues. So, and there's something there that needs exploring, and there needs to be evidence to show how exactly the palace did this. Once again, all we have are allegations that are made, and no corroborating evidence is actually provided. I'm just happy that Her Majesty the Queen isn't around to see this, to see her own grandson betray her legacy, betray the family, and betray the institution that really gave him and his wife everything, and upon which their continued fame and money continues to derive.
Now, there are more allegations against the press, and particularly Prince William's office and his their workings with the press in terms of perhaps planting negative stories to make Harry and Meghan look bad in return for less favourable stories about other members of the royal family not being put in newspapers. So let's just have a little listen to what Prince Harry has said on that, about a promise he made with his brother, Prince William.
I would far rather get destroyed in the press than play along with this game or this business of trading. And to see my brother's office copy the very same thing that we promised the two of us would never ever do, that was heartbreaking.
This is the clip, though, that...
Evidence. Can you please cite what is the actual story or stories to which you're referring, upon which date, in which media outlets were these reported? It's very easy to make these allegations, but we need to see corroborating evidence, and we know where are the members of the press, perhaps speaking with their voices disguised, to say, yes, we were receiving these briefings from members of the royal family. Instead, what do we have? We have completely discredited sources like Kahinda Andrews, Afua Hirsch, people whose careers are built upon stoking racial divisions and looking for evidence of a scandal where there is none, such as in the harmless tweet by Danny Baker, one of the least racist people you'll ever want to meet, somebody who regards the royal family as a clown show, which is why he put out that particular tweet.
No, it hasn't all been negative. In fact, Meghan spoke very highly of her time spent with the late Queen Elizabeth II, particularly on her engagement in Cheshire. She describes the fact that the Queen put a blanket over her in the car, that the Queen was a grandmother figure. Clearly, they both, Harry and Meghan, and we have to keep in mind that this was all filmed before the Queen passed away, but they clearly seem to have a lot of respect for Her Majesty the Queen, but not necessarily the institution of the monarchy.
Well, I think that's the sad thing about this documentary, is there was such hope behind this royal couple when they first got married, and I was one of the great champions. I called Meghan at the time the Heineken princess, able to reach parts of the nation and the Commonwealth that other princesses couldn't reach. And we saw wonderful footage of her engaging with people in the Commonwealth in a way that you wouldn't have seen anybody else in the royal family do. And the way that all of that potential was wasted, I think, is the great tragedy of this entire story. And you actually have to wonder whether actually a lot of the fault lies in Harry not actually briefing his wife, his potential wife, about this. We know how long Kate had before she married Prince William to get used to the role. And it seems as if a lot of this is basically expectations of Meghan not being fulfilled.
Rafe, for the moment, thank you very much. Well, I'm in GB News' Royal Reaction Room all day, bringing you the latest analysis and the fallouts from Harry and Meghan's Netflix documentary series, so stay tuned.
Before we let you go, another question, because of the timing in all of this, and we talked a great deal last Thursday about how this coincided with the 3-month anniversary to the day of Her Majesty passing away, and today coinciding with the 100 days since the King became monarch. And also, of course, Catherine is hosting her carol service in Westminster Abbey tonight. So the timing in all of this, I don't know, are you still there, Cameron? Otherwise, I'll pose this question. Yeah, Cameron, you know, all of this is just such unfortunate timing, or do you think perhaps it is deliberate on the part?
I think it's deliberate.
I mean, it's hard to say, isn't it, Isabel? I think on the one hand, I think from it's probably maybe a Netflix PR perspective, if there is some if it does deliberately coincide with the Princess of Wales carol service. I doubt it was Harry and Meghan themselves who wanted the final 3 episodes to air on this date. But I think if we look at the carol service on its own at the moment, the King's going, the Queen Consort's going, the Prince and Princess of Wales, all these other members of the royal family really are showing unity rather than, and completely ignoring this documentary series that has now aired with Harry and Meghan, and perhaps they want to ride out this storm, because the whole point of this carol service that's happening at Westminster Abbey is to pay tribute to Her Majesty the Queen and her values, as well as recognising service of ordinary people across the country who have done great work for their communities. And unfortunately, this Netflix documentary series has become a distraction, and we are not really talking about this carol service.
OK, Cameron Walker, thank you very much indeed. I know you've got lots more to do to watch, so we'll let you get back to that royal reaction room. Thank you.
Now, if you heard the words contenders, ready, gladiators ready, you would only think of one thing. Yes, the gladiators.
You said in a Scottish accent.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not very good at
Gladiators
Scottish.
ready.
Yeah.
Right, the show's favourite bad boy, you remember Wolf, he's revealed he would love to take part in the upcoming revival. But there might be another little wolf on the horizon, or indeed a wolf cub, if you will. Wolf's son is trying to get involved in the series as well.
Yeah, he's applied for the new series and could take over his iconic role. So we're going to head over to Auckland in New Zealand to speak to Wolf and his son Dean to tell us more about their aspirations for the new show. My God, you look alike, boys.
It's quite a resemblance, isn't there? I've got no hair now, unfortunately.
You've passed your hair on to your son.
Yeah, he's got nice long hair. Yeah.
Listen, this is all coming back on our screens, the big revival. I grew up watching The Gladiators, such brilliant family watching. What is it, do you think, about Gladiators that made it such a successful hit?
as you just explained, the whole family could watch it, from the grandma to little children. And the good thing is, all the people who were young children watching it are now grown-ups, and they'll all like to watch it again. So, you know, it's something that will always be in families' hearts. And I'm so glad that my son Dean now wants to take over where I left off. Hopefully, if they take him on the new series.
What advice are you going to give him?
I've also got another son, Nico.
Oh.
When he finishes his masters in America, he wants to be a contender. So to go up against his brother, they're very competitive.
Oh, gosh.
Keeping it all in the family. So what advice are you going to give to your sons, Wolf?
Basically, be himself. You know, it's...
Is that what you did? You didn't ham it up a bit?
Copy somebody else, you know?
I mean, I know I can't be exactly like my dad, but I think I can do the same and better and bring my own personality to the show.
Were you a bad boy off screen as well, then?
We're very competitive.
I can see that. I can see that. But Mike, I mean, you were always known as, you know, the wolf, the scary one that everyone dreaded. I mean, are you really like that off screen? And indeed, is your son also scary in that sense?
Absolutely not. It was more of a pantomime baddie, and everything was done tongue in cheek. And basically, people love to hate you. It was an enjoyable baddie. It wasn't a nasty baddie.
Who was your favourite gladiator, Wolf?
Myself.
Can I tell you?
Of course you said.
Great answer.
I got taught dance at school by Jet, and my grandfather never got over it. He was her favourite. She was a big hit, wasn't she?
Oh, she was, yeah. Lovely lady. Very, very beautiful. And, yeah, we often, when they had the convention sometimes for the different things in England, we get together and we all chat and have a good laugh about the show.
Well, listen, I hope that you make it into the new series. I can't wait to introduce gladiators to my children, and how lovely if the Wolf legacy continues. Mike and Dean Van Wyk, also known as Wolf, and a prospective son of Wolf, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Great to talk to you, and happy Christmas. Well, Stephen and Anne are here on Breakfast tomorrow morning from 6 a.m, but coming up next, Tom Harwood with The Briefing.
Have a great weekend.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News.